I am Jessica Turner, 28 years old, and my wedding day should have been perfect. The venue was beautiful, the weather cooperated, and my fiancé Kyle was everything I had ever dreamed of. But there were 2 empty seats in the front row that stung more than I could have imagined. My parents chose to attend my brother Nathan's dog's obedience school graduation instead of my wedding. Yes, you read that correctly. They picked a dog over their daughter. Before I tell you how I turned this heartbreak into the most liberating moment of my life, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you've ever felt invisible in your own family. Growing up in suburban Boston, I always felt like I was living in my brother Nathan's shadow. 3 years older than me, Nathan seemed to command our parents' attention in ways I never could. Our parents, Diane and Richard Turner, had what I can only describe as an obvious favorite child, and it wasn't me. I remember my 10th birthday party. Mom had promised it would be special, but when the day arrived, she had only invited 2 of my friends and bought a small cake from the grocery store. Just 2 weeks later, Nathan's birthday featured a backyard carnival complete with a hired clown and custom cake. When I mentioned the difference, Mom patted my head and said, "Nathan's just at that special age. Sweetie, your turn will come." But my turn never did come. The pattern continued throughout our school years. I would bring home straight A's, and my report card would get a quick glance and a distracted, "Good job." Nathan would scrape by with CS. And our parents would take him out for a celebratory dinner, praising his improvement and effort. When I was 17, I won a prestigious art scholarship that covered half my college tuition. I taped the award letter to the refrigerator, hoping for some recognition. Mom took it down to make room for a flyer about Nathan's intramural soccer game. Dad just asked if I could get the scholarship amount increased because they needed to help Nathan start his landscaping business. That business failed within a year, as did the car detailing service the year after that, and the podcast about local sports that never made it past 3 episodes. Each venture was funded by my parents, who drained portions of their retirement savings to give Nathan his chance. Meanwhile, I worked 2 jobs to cover the remaining costs of my art school tuition. I met Kyle during my junior year at Massachusetts College of Art and Design. He was a photography major with kind eyes and the ability to see beauty in unexpected places. The first time he took my picture, I saw myself differently through his lens. I looked confident, artistic, worthy. It was a revelation. "Your face tells stories," Kyle said when he showed me the black and white portrait. "You have so much depth behind your eyes." No one in my family had ever suggested I had depth. I was just Jessica, the reliable one who didn't cause trouble, who could be counted on but was rarely counted important. Kyle came from a warm, supportive family. The first time I visited his parents' home for dinner, his mother Barbara asked thoughtful questions about my artwork. His father Thomas proudly displayed Kyle's photographs throughout their house. The contrast to my own family experience was stark and painful. "They seem to really see you," I commented to Kyle on our drive home. "That's what families are supposed to do," he replied, squeezing my hand. As our relationship grew, Kyle witnessed the dynamics with my family firsthand. He saw how my calls to my parents were cut short when Nathan needed something. He noticed how they forgot the details of my life, but could recite Nathan's accomplishments verbatim. He observed my persistent efforts to earn their approval and the consistent disappointment that followed. "You deserve better," Kyle would tell me. But years of conditioning had convinced me that if I just tried harder, achieved more, or found the right way to communicate, my parents would finally give me the love and recognition I craved. When Kyle proposed after 2 years together, I said yes without hesitation. He was my partner, my supporter, my witness. With him, I felt seen. And secretly, I thought maybe, just maybe, a wedding would be the thing that finally made my parents proud. A beautiful, successful daughter in a white dress, marrying a kind, accomplished man. Surely this milestone would earn their undivided attention and approval. This would be my moment, and they would have to acknowledge it. They would have to see me. So when Kyle slipped that vintage sapphire ring on my finger under the stars at the harbor where we had our first date, I wasn't just saying yes to him. I was saying yes to hope. Hope that a wedding might finally bridge the gap between the daughter I was and the daughter I had always tried to be in my parents' eyes. Little did I know that even this most sacred of occasions would not be enough to shift the family dynamic that had been established decades ago. But sometimes, the most painful disappointments lead to the most powerful awakenings. Kyle and I decided on a spring wedding, with cherry blossoms and soft pinks, creating the perfect backdrop for our celebration of love. I immediately started collecting ideas, filling a scrapbook with fabric swatches, flower arrangements, and venue possibilities. I was determined to create the perfect day, not just for us, but for everyone attending, especially my parents. The day after our engagement, I called my mother, barely containing my excitement. Mom, I was thinking about having the ceremony at Lakeside Gardens. Remember how we drove past it once and you said it would be a perfect wedding venue? Oh, that's nice, honey, she replied, her voice distant. I could hear her typing on her computer. Nathan just sent me the funniest video of Max chasing his tail. Do you want me to forward it to you? Max was Nathan's newly adopted golden retriever. At 31, my brother had finally taken on a responsibility, though my parents were basically co-financing the dog. They had already purchased an orthopedic dog bed that cost more than my monthly rent, a custom collar with Max's name engraved on a gold plate, and were paying for weekly private training sessions. No thanks, Mom. About the wedding, Kyle and I are thinking next April. What do you think? April? She paused. Did I tell you Nathan signed Max up for obedience school? The graduation ceremony is going to be so cute. They even get little doggy caps. This was my first indication of where my wedding would rank in the family priority list. But I pushed the concern aside. Surely when actual planning began, my mother would get excited and involved. Weeks passed, and I scheduled an appointment to look at wedding dresses. Mom had always talked about how she had gone dress shopping with her own mother, and I hoped to recreate that special experience. Saturday at 11, I told her over the phone. The boutique has champagne for us while we browse. This Saturday? Oh, Jess, I can't. Nathan needs me to dog sit while he goes to a concert. Max gets anxious when he's alone too long. I swallowed my disappointment. What about the following weekend? Let me check. No, that's when we're having professional photos taken with Max for the family Christmas card. I ended up going dress shopping alone. The boutique owner looked around awkwardly when I arrived. Just you today? No mother or friends joining. Just me, I confirmed, forcing a smile. I know what I like. I found my dress that day, a flowing align with delicate lace detailing. When I stood on the pedestal looking at my reflection, a tear slid down my cheek. The assistant mistook it for joy. It's the one, isn't it? She asked, clapping her hands together. It was the one. But the empty space where my mother should have been ached more than I wanted to admit. As wedding preparations continued, Kyle's parents stepped in to fill the void left by mine. Barbara helped address invitations, and Thomas researched photographers, insisting on covering that cost as a wedding gift. Kyle's sister Emma became my de facto wedding planning buddy, attending cake tastings and helping choose bridesmaids' dresses. Your family is so wonderful, I told Kyle one night. They're your family now too, he reminded me. But we both knew it wasn't the same as having my own parents' support. 6 months before the wedding, we had a family dinner to finalize some details. I placed a calendar in front of my parents. So the rehearsal dinner will be April 12th, and the wedding is the 13th, I explained, circling the dates in red marker. Kyle's parents suggested the Italian restaurant downtown for the rehearsal. My father glanced at the calendar. April 13th. Should work. My mother nodded, making a note in her phone. I'll make sure we keep it clear. A weight lifted from my shoulders. They had confirmed. They would be there. The rest of the planning process felt lighter, more joyful. I threw myself into creating the perfect day, now secure in the knowledge that my family would be there to witness it. Invitations went out 3 months before the wedding. My parents received the first one, of course, a beautifully calligraphed envelope containing the formal request for their presence on my special day. I even added a handwritten note expressing how much it would mean to have them there. 2 weeks before the wedding, I called home to confirm that Dad would be picking up his tuxedo rental. About that, Jess, my mother began, her voice taking on the placating tone I knew too well. Something's come up. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? Max's obedience school graduation is the same day as your wedding. We've already committed to being there. I thought she was joking. I actually laughed. Very funny, Mom. Seriously, though. Dad needs to get his tux by this weekend or they'll charge us a rush fee. Jessica, I'm serious. We can't make it to the wedding. Nathan needs our support, and we already promised. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. They were choosing a dog graduation over their only daughter's wedding day. You can't be serious, I whispered. It's my wedding. We know, honey. And we're so sorry. But this is really important to Nathan, and Max has worked so hard in his training. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event. As if my wedding wasn't. I sat in stunned silence. Phone pressed to my ear as my mother continued to explain why a dog's graduation ceremony took precedence over her daughter's wedding. Maybe you could move your date, she suggested, as if rescheduling an entire wedding 2 weeks before the event was a reasonable solution. We've already paid the deposit for professional photos at Max's graduation. Nathan says Max is at the top of his class. Move my wedding date. I repeated, my voice rising. Are you listening to yourself, Mom? We have 150 guests coming. Some flying in from across the country. We've paid thousands in non-refundable deposits. This is my wedding. Don't be dramatic, Jessica. My father's voice cut in, indicating I was now on speakerphone. You've always been independent. You'll be fine without us there. Their casual dismissal of one of the most important days of my life felt like a physical blow. This isn't about being independent. This is about you being my parents and choosing a dog over your daughter. Max is family too, my mother countered, her voice taking on that defensive tone she always used when protecting Nathan. And your brother needs our support. And I don't. I was shouting now, years of swallowed hurt bubbling to the surface. I have never asked you for anything. I worked through college. I built my career without connections from you. I've never leaned on you financially like Nathan constantly does. The one time I ask you to just show up for me. You choose a dog graduation. Now you're just being hurtful, my mother sniffed. You know we love you. No, I said quietly, a strange calm replacing my anger. I don't know that. Because love is shown through actions, not words. And your actions have always made it clear where I stand. I hung up the phone and burst into tears. Kyle found me curled on our living room floor, sobbing uncontrollably. When I managed to explain what happened, his face flushed with anger. That's it, he said, pacing our apartment. I'm done with them treating you this way. We're cutting them off after the wedding. They won't even be at the wedding, I reminded him, which set off a fresh wave of tears. Despite Kyle's suggestion that we take a few days to cool off, I couldn't let this go. I called my brother that evening. Did you know about this? I demanded when he answered. About what? Nathan replied, though the hesitation in his voice told me he knew exactly what I was referring to. About Mom and Dad skipping my wedding for your dog's graduation. Did you know? He sighed. Look, Jess, it's not a big deal. You know how they are. Just reschedule. Reschedule my wedding? Are you insane? Why are you making this about you? He snapped. Max has worked really hard. And his graduation is important to me. My wedding is important to me. I shouted into the phone. You're my brother. How can you not see how messed up this is? Whatever, drama queen. Not everything revolves around you. I had hoped, foolishly perhaps, that my brother might side with me just this once. That he might recognize the absurdity of the situation and offer to reschedule the dog event instead. His dismissal was the final confirmation of what I had always known but tried to deny. In the Turner family hierarchy, I would always be last. The week before the wedding was a blur of emotions. Kyle's family rallied around us, with his father offering to walk me down the aisle in place of my dad. My best friend Amanda became my emotional support, staying at our apartment the night before the wedding to help with last-minute preparations and to keep my spirits up. You know what? Amanda said as we sat cross-legged on my living room floor, assembling welcome bags for out-of-town guests. Their loss. Seriously, they're missing one of the most beautiful weddings I've ever been involved in, and more importantly, they're missing their amazing daughter's special day. That reflects on them, not you. I nodded, trying to absorb her words. But that night, alone in the guest room while Kyle slept in our bedroom, maintaining the tradition of not seeing each other before the wedding, I broke down again. I scrolled through childhood photos on my phone, searching for evidence that there had been a time when my parents had seen me, truly seen me. I found a single picture, taken when I was maybe 5 years old, sitting on my father's shoulders at a fair, both of us beaming at the camera. What had happened to that dad? To that relationship? Amanda found me at 3 a.m., still awake, eyes swollen from crying. I can't do this, I whispered. How do I walk down an aisle with everyone knowing my own parents didn't think I was worth showing up for? She sat beside me and took my hands in hers. You walk down that aisle with your head held high because you are marrying an amazing man who adores you. You are starting a new family tomorrow, one that will value you properly. And everyone who matters will be there. But my parents, I began, are missing out, she finished firmly. Their absence says everything about them and nothing about you. Tomorrow isn't about who isn't there. It's about who is there and who will always be there from now on. Her words gave me just enough strength to face the coming day, though the ache of my parents' rejection still throbbed beneath the surface. I woke on my wedding day to sunlight streaming through the guest room curtains and the gentle knock of Kyle's mother at the door. Breakfast is ready, sweetheart, Barbara called. And the hairstylist will be here in an hour. I had always imagined this morning differently. In my dreams, my mother would be the one bringing me breakfast, reminiscing about her own wedding day, helping me manage pre-ceremony jitters. Instead, I had Barbara, kind and well-meaning, but not my mom. The morning proceeded with bridesmaids arriving, makeup being applied, champagne being poured. Everyone carefully avoided mentioning my parents' absence, creating an artificial bubble of cheer that felt both necessary and false. As Amanda helped me into my dress, I caught myself reaching for my phone, half expecting a last-minute message from my mother saying they had changed their minds. There was nothing. However, there was a notification from Instagram. My mother had posted a photo of Nathan and Max, the golden retriever, sporting a tiny graduation cap. The caption read, "So proud of our boy and his best friend on their big day. #proudmom, #dogmom, #graduation." Amanda saw my expression change and gently took the phone from my hands. No social media today. That's a rule. But the damage was done. While I was preparing for my wedding, my mother was proudly documenting a dog's graduation ceremony. Thomas, Kyle's father, knocked on the door as the time approached to leave for the venue. He looked handsome in his tuxedo, his silver hair neatly combed, his smile warm but cautious. "Jessica," he said, taking my hands in his, "I would be honored to walk with you today, but I want you to know that I'm not trying to replace your father. I'm just a stand-in. If you'd prefer to walk alone, everyone will understand." His kindness nearly undid me. I had been holding myself together with sheer will, and this gentle acknowledgement of my pain threatened to collapse my fragile composure. I took a deep breath. "I would be grateful for your company," I managed to say. "Thank you for being here." The drive to the venue passed in a blur. Before I knew it, I was standing at the back of the garden, the string quartet playing softly, guests seated in white chairs along the petal-strewn aisle. From my position, I could see the empty seats in the front row, reserved optimistically for parents who had chosen a dog's milestone over mine. As Thomas offered his arm, I hesitated. "Wait," I said to Amanda, who stood ready with my bouquet. "I think I want to do this alone after all." She nodded in understanding, and Thomas stepped back with a supportive smile. This felt right. I had been emotionally walking alone in my family for years. Today should reflect that truth. The music changed, signaling my entrance. Heads turned, guests rose to their feet. And there at the end of the aisle stood Kyle, his eyes finding mine, filling instantly with tears of love and admiration. In that moment, the emptiness of those two front row seats mattered a little less. I was walking toward my future, toward someone who had always seen my worth. The ceremony was beautiful. We had written our own vows, and Kyle's voice broke as he promised to always see me, hear me, and value me exactly as I was. The significance of those particular promises was not lost on either of us. When it was my turn, I spoke directly to Kyle, but my words were also a declaration to myself and everyone present. I promised to build with you a family based on respect, recognition, and real love. I promised to never let you feel invisible or unimportant. I promise to celebrate your victories, no matter how small, and support you through difficulties, no matter how large. With you, I have found what family should feel like, and I will spend my life making sure you feel that too. During the reception, Kyle's sister Emma gave a touching maid of honor speech, delicately navigating the absence of my family with grace and focusing on the beautiful future Kyle and I would build together. When it came time for the father-daughter dance, Thomas again stepped in. As we swayed to "What a Wonderful World," he whispered, "We are so blessed to have you join our family, Jessica." Truly. I made it through most of the reception without breaking down, smiling for photos, accepting congratulations, dancing with friends. But as the evening wore on, I excused myself for a moment alone, stepping onto the venue's balcony for fresh air. Amanda found me there, staring at my phone. My mother had posted again, this time a family photo after Max's graduation. "Proudest day of our lives," the caption declared. In the image, my parents beamed at the camera, Nathan in the middle holding Max, who wore a graduation cap and a doggy bow tie. The proudest day of their lives was not their daughter's wedding day. It was a dog's graduation from obedience school. Something shifted inside me then, a final thread snapping. I had spent my entire life seeking approval and love from people who were fundamentally incapable of giving it to me. The problem had never been me. It had been them all along. "Amanda," I said, my voice steady despite the tears streaming down my face, "would you do something for me?" "Anything," she replied. "Record a video of me." Back inside, I found Kyle and pulled him aside, explaining what I wanted to do. He nodded, squeezing my hand in support. We gathered our closest friends, Kyle's family, and Amanda with her phone camera ready. Standing before them, still in my wedding dress, I spoke from my heart. "Today, some important people chose not to be here," I began, my voice clear despite the emotion. "But looking around, I see that everyone who truly loves me is in this room." I wanted to record our real vows, the ones that matter, surrounded by our real family, the one we've chosen and the one that chose us back. Kyle and I repeated our vows for the camera, this time with added emotion and the unspoken acknowledgement of the day's painful subtext. As we kissed, our friends and Kyle's family applauded, many wiping away tears. "Send it to them," I told Amanda afterward. "Send it to my parents. I want them to see exactly what they missed. And I want them to know that I was surrounded by love anyway." It was a moment of clarity, of standing in my power, of refusing to minimize my worth any longer. My parents had made their choice. Now I was making mine. The morning after my wedding, I woke in our hotel suite to Kyle gently stroking my hair. "Good morning, Mrs. Reynolds," he whispered, using my new surname with a smile. For a moment, I basked in the simple joy of being married to this wonderful man. Then the events of the previous day came flooding back, including my impulsive decision to send my parents the video of our vows. "Did Amanda send it?" I asked, reaching for my phone. "Last night, after we left," Kyle confirmed. "She added a message from you. Something about choices and consequences." I nodded, remembering the words I had dictated to Amanda. You chose a dog's graduation over your daughter's wedding. You chose Nathan, as you always have. Now you can see what that choice cost you. This was the moment you could never get back. My phone, which had been on Do Not Disturb mode overnight, exploded with notifications when I turned the setting off. 15 missed calls from my mother. 7 from my father. 3 voicemails. Dozens of text messages. The first text from my mother had come just an hour after the video was sent. Jessica, call us immediately. This is childish and hurtful. The next few messages attempted to minimize their absence. It was just one day. We can celebrate with you later. You're making this a bigger deal than it needs to be. We're sorry if you felt hurt, but Nathan needed us there. By the 5th or 6th message, the tone had changed. Please call us back. We need to talk about this. Your father hasn't slept. Please respond. Jessica, we're worried about you. Nathan had texted too, his messages predictably defensive. Way to ruin Max's special day with your drama. Mom's been crying for hours. Hope you're happy with yourself. I set the phone down without responding to any of them. Kyle watched me carefully. What do you want to do? He asked. I thought for a moment. Nothing, I finally said. We're leaving for our honeymoon in 3 hours. I'm going to enjoy 2 weeks in Hawaii with my husband. And they can sit with their choices for a while. Kyle nodded, a proud smile spreading across his face. I think that's a perfect plan. We turned off our phones when we boarded the plane to Hawaii, embracing the opportunity to disconnect not just from technology, but from the family drama that had overshadowed our wedding. For 2 blissful weeks, I didn't have to think about my parents' betrayal or my brother's selfishness. I focused instead on building memories with Kyle, on snorkeling in crystal-clear waters, on watching sunsets from our private balcony, on beginning our marriage in peace and joy. When we returned home, our mailbox was stuffed with letters, most postmarked within days of our wedding. My mother's handwriting covered envelope after envelope. I gathered them all and set them on our kitchen counter, not yet ready to read them. Take your time, Kyle advised. There's no rush to respond. A week after our return, as I was settling back into work and normal life, my phone rang with my mother's number. After 23 missed calls over the past 3 weeks, I finally answered. Hello, I said, my voice neutral. Jessica, thank God, my mother breathed. We've been so worried. Why haven't you returned our calls? I was on my honeymoon, I replied simply. You know, after my wedding. The one you missed. About that, she began. Her voice taking on the cajoling tone she often used to smooth over Nathan's mistakes. We feel terrible, truly. We never meant to hurt you. We just didn't think it was such a big deal. We can have a family celebration dinner to make up for it. Her words confirmed what I had already known. They genuinely didn't understand the magnitude of their actions or the depth of my pain. In their minds, missing their only daughter's wedding was an unfortunate scheduling conflict, not a profound statement about their priorities. I'm not ready to see you, I said firmly. I need time. But we're your parents, she protested, as if that title alone entitled them to instant forgiveness. Yes, you are. And I'm your daughter. The one whose wedding you skipped for a dog graduation. I'll let you know when I'm ready to talk. I ended the call despite her continued protests. Minutes later, Kyle texted to say my parents were at his photography studio, asking for our home address. Don't give it to them, I texted back. I'll handle this. I called my father's cell phone. Dad, you need to leave Kyle's workplace immediately. This is inappropriate. We need to see you, he insisted. This has gone on long enough. No, it hasn't, I countered. You don't get to decide the timeline for my forgiveness. And showing up at my husband's business is completely out of line. We're coming to your apartment, he stated. Nathan told us where you live. Of course he had. Boundaries had never been my family's strong suit. I hung up and warned Kyle, who left work immediately to meet me at home. We were sitting together on our couch when the doorbell rang an hour later. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door to find my parents standing there, looking somehow both apologetic and indignant. My mother held a large gift-wrapped box, an obvious peace offering. "Can we come in?" she asked, already moving forward as if my answer couldn't possibly be no. I stood my ground, blocking the doorway. "No. I told you I wasn't ready to see you." "Don't be ridiculous," my father said. "We're already here. Let's just talk." "The fact that you showed up after I explicitly said I needed time is exactly the problem," I replied, feeling Kyle's supportive presence behind me. "You don't respect my boundaries. You don't listen to my needs. You make decisions based entirely on what you want." "We're your parents," my mother repeated, as if that excused everything. "Yes, you are. And I'm a grown, married woman who asked for space. I'm not that little girl desperate for your approval anymore. I've built a life and a family that values me properly." My directness seemed to startle them. They were used to me accommodating their wishes, swallowing my hurt, making things easy. This new, boundary-enforcing Jessica was foreign to them. "When I'm ready to talk," I continued, "we can meet at a neutral location. Not here. This is my home with Kyle, and it's a safe space for me. I'll call you when I'm ready." I closed the door gently but firmly, then leaned against it, my heart racing. Kyle wrapped his arms around me. "I'm so proud of you," he whispered. It was the first time in my life I had stood up to my parents as an adult, as an equal. It was terrifying and empowering all at once. And it was just the beginning of a new chapter in our relationship, one where I would no longer accept crumbs of attention or conditional love. 3 weeks later, I felt ready to meet with my parents. I suggested a coffee shop halfway between our homes, a public place where emotions would need to be kept in check. Kyle offered to come with me, but I decided this was a conversation I needed to have alone. I arrived early, selecting a corner table that offered some privacy. When my parents walked in, I was struck by how tired they looked. My mother's eyes had dark circles beneath them, and my father's normally perfect posture was slightly stooped. They sat across from me, an awkward silence hanging between us until the server came to take our orders. Once she left, my mother reached across the table for my hand. I placed mine in my lap instead. "Jessica," she began, her voice tight with emotion, "we've missed you so much. This separation has been too hard." "It has been hard," I agreed. "But it's been necessary. I needed time to process what happened and what it means for our relationship moving forward." "What it means," my father repeated. "It was one mistake. Everyone makes mistakes." "It wasn't one mistake," I said calmly. "It was a culmination of a lifetime of choices that have consistently shown me where I stand in this family. And I'm not here to rehash the wedding. I'm here because I want to talk about the bigger pattern." I reached into my bag and pulled out a leather-bound book. I had spent the past weeks creating it, a documented history of my family's dynamics. Inside were photographs, diary entries, text message screenshots, all illustrating the pattern of favoritism that had defined my childhood and continued into my adult life. "What's this?" my mother asked as I placed it on the table. "This is our family history as I've experienced it," I explained. "I made it because I needed you to see what I've felt for years, and because I know if I just tell you, you'll dismiss it as me being dramatic or sensitive." My father frowned but opened the book. The first page showed 2 birthday cakes, side by side. One elaborate construction for Nathan's 11th birthday, one simple grocery store cake for my 10th. The caption read, "Same year, 1 month apart. Same family, different treatment." They paged through slowly, growing quieter as they progressed. There were Christmas photos showing the disparity in gifts, screenshots of text conversations where they had forgotten important events in my life while remembering trivial details of Nathan's. A list of the financial support given to Nathan over the years compared to what I had received. The final page was the Instagram post from my wedding day. Proudest day of our lives, with a photo of them celebrating Max's graduation. My mother closed the book, tears streaming down her face. "We never meant to make you feel this way. I know you didn't mean to," I said softly. "But intent doesn't erase impact. You've consistently prioritized Nathan to the point where a dog's graduation ceremony took precedence over your daughter's wedding. My father started to speak, his tone defensive, but my mother placed a hand on his arm. "No, Richard," she said quietly. "Look at the evidence. It's all there." Before my father could respond, the coffee shop door opened and Nathan walked in. I stiffened immediately. "I asked him to come," my father explained. "We're a family. We should discuss this as a family." The old Jessica would have accommodated this ambush. The new Jessica stood up. "I didn't agree to meet with Nathan. I was clear about wanting to speak to just you two first." Nathan approached our table, his expression a mixture of annoyance and awkward discomfort. "Sit down, Jess. You've made your point with that video. Can we move on now?" "No," I said firmly. "We can't just move on. And this is exactly the problem. Dad, you invited Nathan without asking me, dismissing my clearly stated boundary. Nathan, you're speaking to me as if I'm being unreasonable for being hurt that our parents missed my wedding for a dog graduation. It wasn't just about Max." Nathan protested. "I needed them there for support. You know I've been going through a rough time." "You've been going through a rough time for 15 years, I responded. "And they've always dropped everything to be there for you, including my wedding day." Just then, the coffee shop door opened again, and Kyle walked in. He spotted us and came directly to the table. I hadn't asked him to come, but I was immensely grateful for his presence. "Everything okay here?" he asked, his eyes fixed on me. "Kyle." My mother greeted, her voice falsely bright. "We were just having a family discussion." "Yes," he replied coolly. "My wife mentioned she was meeting her parents today." "Just her parents?" The pointed emphasis on wife and the clear indication that Nathan's presence was unexpected wasn't lost on anyone at the table. Nathan rolled his eyes. "Great, you brought backup. Always the victim, aren't you, Jess?" Kyle's jaw tightened, but I placed a hand on his arm. This was my battle to fight. "I'm not a victim, Nathan. I'm a person who's finally acknowledging a painful truth about our family. Mom, Dad, I didn't create this book to hurt you. I made it because I want a better relationship with you. But that can't happen until you see the reality of our family dynamic." My mother looked down at the book again, her fingers tracing one of the photographs. "The things in here," she said softly. "They're all true, aren't they? We really have treated you differently all these years." My father's defensive posture finally began to crack. "We never meant to play favorites. Nathan just seemed to need us more. You were always so capable, so independent." "I became independent because I had to," I explained. "I learned early that if I wanted something done, I needed to do it myself. That doesn't mean I didn't need you too." Nathan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. For perhaps the first time, he was witnessing our parents acknowledge their favoritism. And it clearly made him uneasy. "So what now?" my father asked. "What do you want from us, Jessica?" "I want a relationship based on mutual respect," I answered honestly. "I want you to hear me when I tell you something is important to me. I want you to make an effort to be present in my life in meaningful ways. And I think family therapy would be a good place to start, if you're willing." My mother nodded immediately. "Yes, anything. I don't want to lose you, Jessica." My father was slower to respond, but eventually he nodded too. "I suppose we could try that." Nathan stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. You're letting her manipulate you with that stupid book. I'm not going to therapy because Jess wants to play the martyr." As he stormed out, I felt a strange sense of calm. His reaction only confirmed what the book had documented. Nathan had been conditioned to expect the family to revolve around his needs and was uncomfortable when that changed. "He'll come around," my mother said, though she sounded uncertain. "Maybe. Maybe not," I replied. "But my relationship with you two isn't contingent on Nathan's participation. I'm setting boundaries for myself, and you'll need to decide if you can respect them." By the end of our meeting, we had agreed to bi-weekly family therapy sessions and a set of basic boundaries: no unannounced visits, respect for my privacy with Kyle, and a commitment to more balanced attention between Nathan and me. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a beginning. As Kyle and I walked to our car afterward, he squeezed my hand. "You were amazing in there. How do you feel?" I considered the question carefully. "Lighter," I finally said. like I've set down something heavy I've been carrying for years. The road ahead would be long and likely difficult. Decades of established family patterns wouldn't change overnight. But for the first time, I felt hope that change was possible. And more importantly, I had discovered my own voice and the courage to use it. The 6 months following our confrontation marked a period of careful rebuilding. The family therapy sessions were often uncomfortable, sometimes heated, but ultimately productive. My parents struggled initially with acknowledging the impact of their actions. Defensiveness, their default response when faced with painful truths. But our therapist was skilled at guiding conversations back to empathy and understanding. Nathan attended only 2 sessions before declaring the whole process a waste of time. His absence actually simplified our work, allowing my parents and me to focus on our specific relationship without his complex dynamics muddying the waters. During this period, I maintained clear boundaries. Kyle and I had Sunday dinners with his family, but limited visits with mine to once a month, always in public places or at their home, never at ours. I stopped answering phone calls that came after 9 p.m. unless it was a genuine emergency. I declined invitations that didn't respect my time or interests. Each small boundary was a declaration. I matter. My time matters. My feelings matter. Kyle supported me unfailingly through this process, holding space for my grief and anger on bad days, celebrating small victories on good ones. His parents, too, continued to show me what healthy family love looked like, never asking for details about my therapy sessions, but always making it clear they were there if I needed them. Family isn't just about blood, Barbara told me one evening as we prepared dinner together in her kitchen. It's about who shows up consistently with love. In our 3rd month of therapy, my mother made a breakthrough. We were discussing a childhood memory, one where I had won a state art competition at age 12. My parents had missed the award ceremony because Nathan had a minor cold. I remember feeling so disappointed, I explained. Not just because you missed it, but because when I got home and showed you the trophy, you barely looked up from taking Nathan's temperature. My mother was quiet for a long moment. Then, to my surprise, she began to cry. I missed so many moments, she said through her tears. Important ones. Ones I can never get back. And for what? Nathan isn't any better off for our hovering. If anything, we've made him dependent and entitled. And we've hurt you deeply in the process. It was the first time she had fully acknowledged the damage without qualification or excuse. I reached across the space between us and took her hand. We cried together, beginning the process of genuine healing. My father took longer to reach this level of insight, but in his own way. He made efforts. He started calling me once a week just to chat, asking questions about my art and actually listening to the answers. For my birthday, he gave me a book of art techniques he had researched himself, with specific pages marked that he thought might interest me based on my current work. Small gestures, but meaningful ones. For months after the wedding, Kyle and I discovered I was pregnant. We were overjoyed, but cautious about sharing the news, particularly with my parents. Would this grandchild be treated differently than any child Nathan might eventually have? We told Kyle's parents first. Their genuine excitement setting the bar for what a healthy reaction should look like. Then, during a therapy session, I shared the news with my parents. I'm pregnant, I said simply. The baby is due in July. My mother's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes immediately filling with tears. My father sat very still, blinking rapidly. I'm telling you this now, I continued, because I want this child to have grandparents who are fully present. But I need you to understand that the patterns we've been discussing cannot extend to the next generation. This child will not be compared to Nathan's children, if he has them. This child will not be made to feel less important or less worthy of attention. My directness might have offended them months earlier, but now they both nodded in understanding. We want to do better, my mother said. We want to be the grandparents this baby deserves. And to their credit, they made every effort. They attended the baby shower, bringing thoughtful gifts rather than extravagant ones meant to impress. They asked before touching my growing belly. respecting my bodily autonomy. They offered help without trying to take control. Perhaps most tellingly, when Nathan finally got engaged 6 months into my pregnancy, they managed to celebrate his milestone without diminishing mine. They didn't compare the events or suggest my baby shower should be rescheduled to accommodate his engagement party. Progress. Real and meaningful. On our first wedding anniversary, we had a small celebration at Kyle's parents' home. To my surprise, my parents not only attended but brought a gift that showed real thought. A professionally framed wedding photo alongside a beautiful letter acknowledging their absence that day and expressing their regret. We know we can never get that day back. My father said as I opened it, but we want you to know that we understand now what we lost by not being there. And we're grateful for the second chance. Nathan's journey towards self-awareness was slower and less certain. The shift in our parents' attention clearly unsettled him, and he often made passive-aggressive comments about me monopolizing family time. But without their constant enabling, he was gradually forced to develop more independence and responsibility. When our daughter Lily was born, something shifted in him too. Holding his niece for the first time, I saw a softness in my brother I hadn't witnessed before. "She has your eyes," he said quietly. "Remember how Dad used to say your eyes could see right through people's nonsense?" It was a small moment of connection, an acknowledgement of our shared history that felt like the beginning of a different kind of sibling relationship. Not perfect, not instantly healed, but possible in a way it hadn't seemed before. The journey of healing a family is never truly complete. There are still moments when old patterns emerge, when I feel that familiar sting of being overlooked or undervalued. But now I have the tools and confidence to address these moments directly. I no longer silence myself to keep peace or diminish my needs to avoid rocking the boat. And I have created my own family now, one built on the principles I always longed for: equality, recognition, genuine presence. Kyle and I make certain that Lily knows she is seen and valued exactly as she is. We celebrate her uniqueness rather than trying to mold her into some preconceived notion of who she should be. When people ask me about my wedding day now, I answer honestly. Yes, my parents weren't there. Yes, it was painful. But that absence led to a reckoning that was long overdue. One that ultimately created the possibility for a healthier relationship. Sometimes the most painful experiences are also the most transformative. My parents skipping my wedding for a dog's graduation ceremony was the breaking point that finally forced us all to confront the dysfunction that had shaped our family for decades. Without that moment, we might have continued in our unhealthy patterns indefinitely. The greatest gift I've received from this journey is the understanding that I am worthy of love and recognition exactly as I am. I don't need to earn it through achievement or accommodation. I don't need to silence my needs to be deserving of attention. My worth is inherent, unquestionable, complete. This knowledge is what I hope to pass on to my daughter, and to anyone who has felt invisible in their own family. You matter. Your feelings matter. And you deserve a family, whether biological or chosen, that sees you clearly and loves you completely. Have you ever had to establish boundaries with family members who couldn't see your worth? How did you find the courage to stand up for yourself? Leave a comment below sharing your experience. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories of transformation and healing. And remember, sometimes the most painful moments in our lives are actually doorways to our most authentic selves. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. My name is Amanda, I'm 32, and last Christmas changed everything I thought I knew about family. I drove through light snow to my parents' suburban home. My kids Emma and Jacob bouncing with excitement in the backseat, homemade cookies, and carefully wrapped presents on their laps. When I knocked on the familiar door of my childhood home, my mother Diane peeked through the window, then opened it just enough to say, "Today's not a good day for your kind of energy." My children looked up at me, confusion in their eyes. I just took their hands and said, "Let's go get pancakes." Before I continue this story, where are you watching from? Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had family drama around the holidays. Growing up in a middle-class Portland suburb, I never questioned that something was off about our family dynamics. My mother, Diane, ran our household with military precision and emotional manipulation that I only recognized years later in therapy. Everything had to be perfect: our grades, our appearance, our behavior, especially when others were watching. But no matter how hard I tried, I could never match the golden status of my younger sister Rachel. Rachel was 3 years younger than me, but somehow always seemed to be miles ahead in our mother's eyes. When I brought home A-minuses, Rachel brought home A-pluses. When I made the volleyball team, Rachel became team captain. It wasn't that Rachel was terrible. We actually got along well as kids, but our mother's blatant favoritism created an unspoken competition that poisoned what could have been a normal sisterly relationship. I still remember my 16th birthday when my parents gave me a used Civic with 80,000 miles on it. I was grateful, thrilled even, until Rachel's 16th birthday 3 years later, when she received a brand new Volkswagen Beetle. When I mentioned the disparity, my mother said, "Rachel has always known exactly what she wants in life. You should take notes." It was the story of our childhood in one cutting remark. I met David during my sophomore year of college. He was kind, stable, and genuinely interested in my thoughts and feelings, all novelties compared to my family experience. We married when I was 21, partly because I loved him and partly because I was desperate to create my own family, one where love didn't come with conditions and comparisons. Emma came along a year later, and Jacob 3 years after that. For a while, we were happy. My mother criticized my rush into marriage and motherhood, especially when it meant completing my graphic design degree part-time. "Rachel is focusing on her career first," she would say during our weekly phone calls. "She's really building something for herself in New York." Rachel had moved to Manhattan after college for a marketing job that our mother described as prestigious and high-powered, though the details always seemed conveniently vague. The cracks in my marriage started appearing after Jacob was born. David's pharmaceutical sales job required frequent travel, and the distance grew between us with each trip. When Jacob was 4, I found text messages between David and his coworker Melissa. The affair had been going on for nearly a year. The divorce was painful but necessary, and suddenly I was a single mother at 29, juggling freelance graphic design work while raising 2 young children. My financial situation became increasingly precarious. Child support helped but wasn't enough, and freelance work was inconsistent. My mother never failed to remind me that Rachel would never have let herself end up in this position. Even as Rachel posted Instagram photos of exotic vacations and designer purchases from her Manhattan apartment. 6 months ago, I caught a break when George, an old friend of my mother's, offered me a 2-bedroom apartment at below market rent. It wasn't fancy, but it was in a good school district and had enough space for the 3 of us. I signed a 2-year lease and finally felt like we were finding stable ground. Then 3 months ago, Rachel unexpectedly moved back to Portland. She told everyone she was taking a break from her marketing career to reassess her priorities, but something about the sudden move fell off. My mother immediately shifted into high gear, helping Rachel get settled while criticizing me for not doing more to support my sister during her career transition. Family helps family, Amanda. My mother lectured during our last Sunday dinner together in November. Rachel would do the same for you if the situations were reversed. I bit my tongue instead of pointing out that Rachel had never once offered to help me during my divorce or financial struggles. Last Christmas had been tense, but manageable. We gathered at my parents' house, exchanged gifts, and maintained the facade of a happy family. This year, I was determined to make it special for Emma and Jacob, despite my tight budget. I spent weeks finding perfect, affordable gifts and baking their favorite cookies. The kids made handmade presents for their grandparents, aunt, and uncle. I even splurged on a new dress for myself, a small act of defiance against my mother's inevitable comments about my shabby appearance. The week before Christmas, the family group chat became unusually quiet. My messages about arrival times and what dishes to bring went unanswered. 2 days before Christmas, my brother Michael called. "Hey, have you done something to upset Mom?" he asked without preamble. "Not that I know of," I replied, wrapping Jacob's new action figures while hiding in my bedroom closet. "Why?" "She seems off. Keeps talking about how family loyalty is being tested this year." "Well, that sounds ominous and vague, which is Mom's specialty," I joked. "Did she give any details?" "No, but Rachel was there nodding along." "I thought maybe you two had some kind of fight." "I haven't spoken to Rachel in weeks," I said truthfully. "Huh. Well, see you at brunch then. Hope it's not too weird." Little did I know just how weird it would get. Christmas morning dawned with the kind of perfect light snowfall that makes everything look like a holiday card. Emma woke me at 6:30, unable to contain her excitement any longer. We woke Jacob, and the kids tore through their modest pile of presents with unbridled joy. The living room became a cheerful disaster of wrapping paper and excited shrieks. "Mom, the art set has real pastels," Emma exclaimed, carefully examining each colored stick. "Look, it's exactly the dinosaur I wanted," Jacob shouted, clutching the T-Rex I'd hunted through 3 different stores to find. I sipped my coffee, watching them with my heart full. This was what mattered, their happiness, not my mother's approval or Rachel's seemingly perfect life. We had agreed to meet at my parents' house at 11 o'clock for Christmas brunch. I helped the kids pack up their grandparents' gifts and the cookies they'd decorated. Emma wore the red velvet dress she'd picked out, while Jacob sported a little button-up shirt and clip-on tie. I put on my new emerald sweater dress and even took time with my makeup and hair. For once, I wouldn't give my mother anything to criticize. The drive took 20 minutes. Snow falling more heavily now. Emma and Jacob sang along to Christmas songs on the radio, their excitement building as we got closer. "Do you think Grandma made her special cinnamon rolls?" Jacob asked. "And will Tyler be there with our cousin presents?" Emma added, referring to Michael's son who was her age. "I'm sure Grandma made all the special food," I assured them. Pulling onto my parents' street. And yes, Uncle Michael said they'd be there. We parked behind Rachel's new Audi in the driveway. I noticed my brother's car was missing, but didn't think much of it. They were probably running late too. The kids bounded up the cleared walkway to the front door, careful not to drop their gifts and cookies. The house looked picture perfect with white lights and evergreen garlands. Through the window, I could see the towering Christmas tree in the living room, the same spot it had been throughout my childhood. Emma rang the doorbell while Jacob performed an impatient little dance beside her, his breath making little clouds in the cold air. We waited longer than usual. I was about to suggest ringing again when I saw movement behind the frosted glass panel beside the door. My mother's face appeared, peering out through the window. Our eyes met. Instead of the warm smile I expected, it was Christmas after all. Her expression remained stony. She disappeared from the window, and I heard the deadbolt turning. The door opened just a crack, not the usual wide welcome on Christmas morning. My mother stood in the opening, blocking any view into the house. She was dressed immaculately in a cashmere sweater and pearls, her hair perfectly styled. "Merry Christmas, Mom," I said, confusion already creeping in. "We brought." "Today's not a good day for your kind of energy," she interrupted, her voice cold and clipped. Her eyes flickered briefly to Emma and Jacob before returning to me with unmistakable dismissal. I felt like I'd been slapped. Emma and Jacob looked up at me, confusion clear on their small faces. Jacob's lower lip began to tremble. "But it's Christmas," was all I could manage to say. "Yes, and we're having a peaceful one this year," my mother replied. "You should have thought about consequences before your actions." Before I could respond, she closed the door firmly. I stood frozen for several seconds. my mind racing to make sense of what had just happened. Emma tugged at my hand. Mommy? Why is Grandma mad? Did we do something wrong? Her question snapped me back to reality. My children were standing in the snow, rejected by their grandmother on Christmas morning. Whatever was happening, I needed to protect them from this hurt. I squeezed their hands and mustered a calm I didn't feel. No, sweethearts, you didn't do anything wrong. Grandma isn't feeling well today. Let's go get pancakes instead. But our presents for Grandma and Grandpa, Jacob said, holding up his carefully wrapped package. And Aunt Rachel and Uncle Michael, Emma added, her voice small. We'll save them for another day, I promised, guiding them back to the car. Let's make a new adventure today. As I buckled them into their seats, I blinked back tears. What had I supposedly done? My mother's words echoed in my head. You should have thought about consequences before your actions. What actions? The last time we'd spoken had been a perfectly normal conversation about Christmas plans. I drove to Holiday Diner, the only place open on Christmas morning. The cheerful red booths and Christmas decorations felt surreal against my spinning thoughts. The kids, resilient as always, perked up at the promise of chocolate chip pancakes and hot chocolate with extra whipped cream. As they colored their placemats, I checked my phone. No missed calls from my mother, but several text notifications from extended family members. Heard about what happened. How could you? From Aunt Karen. Family first, Amanda. Disappointed in you. From Uncle Steve. Your mother is devastated. Fix this. From my stepfather Robert. What was happening? What had I supposedly done? Then my phone rang. Michael. I'm with the kids at Holiday Diner. I said immediately. What's going on? Mom just turned us away at the door. Why did you cancel your sister's lease? Michael demanded, his voice a mixture of anger and panic. What? What lease? What are you talking about? Rachel's apartment lease. She got an eviction notice yesterday saying you demanded the landlord terminate her lease immediately. On Christmas Eve, Amanda? Really? I felt like I'd stepped into the twilight zone. Michael, I have no idea what you're talking about. Rachel has an apartment? Since when? His pause told me he was equally confused. Wait, you really don't know? Rachel moved into an apartment owned by George Winters last month. George Winters? That's my landlord, Michael. Wait, what? I live in one of George's buildings. Have for 6 months now. But I had nothing to do with Rachel's living situation. I didn't even know she was renting from George. There was a long pause. I could hear heated whispers in the background. Michael, is Rachel there with you right now? Everyone's here for Christmas brunch, Amanda. Except you, apparently. The pieces started falling into place. Where is Rachel living exactly? What's the address? Michael told me, and my stomach dropped. It was my building, apartment 3B. I lived in 2A. Michael, something's very wrong here. I never contacted George about any lease. I barely even talked to Rachel. Why would I? She has emails, Amanda. Emails from you to George, demanding he evict her immediately. She showed them to all of us. That's impossible, I said, watching Emma help Jacob pour syrup on his pancakes. I never sent any emails about Rachel to anyone. Well, someone did. Using your email account. With details only you would know about her. I felt physically ill. Michael, I'm telling you. This wasn't me. Someone's setting me up. His sigh was heavy with disbelief. Fix this, Amanda. You've ruined Christmas. The call disconnected. I sat in the booth, stunned. As the holiday music played cheerfully overhead and my children enjoyed their consolation breakfast, unaware that our family had just imploded. With shaking hands, I dialed George's number from the diner parking lot. The kids were still inside finishing their pancakes, watched over by the friendly waitress who'd taken pity on our car trouble story. George answered on the 4th ring, his voice cautious. Amanda? Merry Christmas. George, I need to understand what's happening. My brother says Rachel was evicted from one of your apartments because of me. There was a confused pause. But you sent the termination request yourself. No, I didn't. I've never contacted you about Rachel's lease. I didn't even know she was renting from you. Amanda, I have the emails. You wrote that having your sister in the same building was causing family problems. You asked me to terminate her lease as a personal favor. My mind raced. George, when did Rachel start renting from you? About 2 months ago. She said you recommended the building to her. 2 months ago. Right after Rachel mysteriously returned from New York. And when did you receive these emails from me? Last week. December 18th. You followed up with signed documents on the 20th. I took a deep breath. George, I never sent those emails. I never signed any documents. Someone is impersonating me. The silence stretched between us. George, please. What email address were those messages from? He told me, and my heart sank. It was my personal Gmail account. Someone hacked my email, I said, more to myself than to George. Can you forward those emails to me? I need to see what was sent. I suppose I can do that. George said slowly, but Amanda, the lease termination is already processed. The apartment has been promised to a new tenant. A horrible suspicion formed. Who's the new tenant, George? He hesitated. Your sister, Rachel Riley. She's taking over the lease on January 1st. At a reduced rate, given the circumstances. The betrayal was so breathtaking I couldn't speak for several seconds. She showed me texts from you, Amanda, saying you wanted to make things right by helping her get a better apartment in the building. You agreed to vacate your apartment so she could have it. I'm vacating my apartment, I whispered. According to the lease termination you signed, effective December 31st. The world tilted beneath me. 6 days. I had 6 days before my children and I would be homeless. George, I never agreed to this. I never signed anything. Rachel forged my signature. His voice hardened. That's a serious accusation, Amanda. Yes, it is. And it's true. I watched through the window as Emma helped Jacob clean syrup off his face. I'll prove it to you. Just please, forward me those emails. After hanging up, I tried calling my mother repeatedly. Each call went straight to voicemail. I texted, Mom, we need to talk. Someone is pretending to be me. No response. Then a text from my stepfather, Robert. Your mother is very disappointed in your vindictiveness. We raised you better than this. Emma pushed open the diner door, Jacob trailing behind her. Mom, are you okay? You look sad. I forced a smile. Just a grown-up problem, sweetie. Nothing for you to worry about. But when we arrived home, the problem became impossible to hide. Taped to our apartment door was an official notice. Lease termination confirmation. Apartment 2A, Winters Properties. Tenant, Amanda Riley. Vacate by December 31st. I ushered the kids inside, told them to watch their new Christmas movie, and locked myself in the bathroom. The panic attack hit with full force. Gasping breaths, tunnel vision, the floor shifting beneath me. Where would we go in 6 days? How could Rachel do this? How could my mother support this? My phone rang. Lisa, my best friend since college. Merry Christmas. Just checking how brunch went with the dragon lady. The moment I heard her voice, the tears came. Between sobs, I explained everything, being turned away at the door, Michael's accusation. George's revelation, the eviction notice. That evil witch. Lisa exclaimed, meaning Rachel. And your mother is supporting this? Honey, that's not just toxic family drama, that's actual fraud. That's identity theft. That's illegal. I don't know what to do, I admitted, sitting on the bathroom floor. I have 6 days to find a new place in winter with holiday schedules, no savings. And, stop, Lisa interrupted firmly. You're not going anywhere. First, you're bringing the kids to my place for dinner tonight. Second, we're calling my cousin Catherine, who's a lawyer. Third, Rachel doesn't get to steal your home through fraud. After hanging up, I splashed cold water on my face and tried to regain composure. I needed to be strong for Emma and Jacob. When I opened my bathroom door, Emma stood in the hallway, her small face serious. "Mom, are we in trouble?" she asked quietly. "Is that why Grandma wouldn't let us in?" I knelt down to her level. "No, sweetie. We're not in trouble. There's just been a misunderstanding with Grandma and Aunt Rachel. I'm working on fixing it." "Why would Aunt Rachel be mad at us? She never even visits." Out of the mouths of babes. Rachel had barely acknowledged her niece and nephew over the years. Despite living just across the country. No birthday cards, no Christmas presents unless they were physically in the same room, no FaceTime calls to stay connected. Later that evening, while the kids played with Lisa's daughter Zoe, I scrolled through social media. There it was. Rachel had posted photos from Christmas at our parents' house. Turkey, presents, smiling faces. My mother, stepfather, brother, sister-in-law, nephew. One big happy family. The caption made me physically ill. So blessed to have family that truly supports each other through hard times. #RealFamilyLove, #Christmas. My mother had commented, "So blessed to have my special girl home again where she belongs." As I stared at the happy photos, a memory surfaced. Last week, my mother had asked to use my phone to call her friend Patricia when her own phone died during a rare visit to my apartment. She'd disappeared into the kitchen for nearly 15 minutes. Had she been snooping? Had she found something to use against me? I checked my email, digging through spam folders and deleted items. There they were. Emails between me and George about terminating Rachel's lease. Emails I had never written or sent. But that wasn't all. I found drafts of hostile messages supposedly from me to various family members, scheduled to send after Christmas. Complaints about holiday gifts, criticisms of my mother's cooking. Accusations about favoritism. Someone, Rachel most likely, had created a digital trail making me look unstable and vindictive, and she'd done it using access to my email account. Possibly during my mother's visit. "Lisa, I called weekly. I need to use your laptop." Over the next hour, I discovered the full extent of Rachel's deception. Fake Amanda had been sending subtle messages to family members for weeks, laying groundwork for the ultimate betrayal. There were even screenshots of fake text messages showing me threatening Rachel. "This is seriously messed up," Lisa said, reading over my shoulder. "Your sister needs professional help." But the final blow came later that night, after the kids were asleep in Lisa's guest room. My banking app notified me of a transfer. My security deposit had been moved to a new account. Rachel's account, according to the confirmation email from George. I collapsed onto Lisa's couch, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the betrayal. Not just Rachel's elaborate fraud, but my mother's willingness, eagerness even, to believe the worst of me. To exclude me and my children from Christmas. To support making us homeless. The pain was physical, radiating through my chest as tears streamed down my face. This wasn't new behavior, I realized. This was just the most extreme version of what had happened my entire life. Rachel being believed. Rachel being favored. Rachel being chosen. Always. "I can't fight them," I whispered to Lisa as she handed me a glass of wine. "They're my family." "No," Lisa said firmly, sitting beside me. "Family doesn't do this. Family doesn't frame you for things you didn't do. Family doesn't try to make you and your children homeless at Christmas." I cried until there were no tears left, falling asleep on Lisa's couch surrounded by discarded tissues. When I woke the next morning, something had shifted inside me. The grief remained, but alongside it was something new. Determination. Anger. Resolve. I wouldn't let them take everything from me again. Not this time. Christmas evening was a strange balance of trying to maintain normalcy for the children while my world collapsed around me. We ate dinner at Lisa's, opened the few presents she had for the kids, and watched Christmas movies. Emma and Jacob were resilient, but confused by the sudden change in plans. As we prepared for bed in Lisa's guest room, Emma looked up at me with those perceptive eyes that sometimes made her seem far older than 10. "Mom," she asked in a small voice, "does Grandma not love us anymore?" The question broke my heart. "Grandma is going through something right now," I said carefully. "Sometimes adults make mistakes and bad choices, even grandmas." "But it's Christmas," Jacob said, clutching his new dinosaur. "Christmas is for family." "You're right, buddy. And we're a family. You, me, and Emma. We're the most important family, and we're together." After they fell asleep, I made calls to family members, hoping someone would listen to my side. The responses were devastating. "Aunt Karen, your mother told us what you did to Rachel." "I never thought you'd stoop so low, Amanda." "Uncle Steve, I always thought you had more integrity than this. Using your position with George to punish your sister is shameful." "Cousin Jennifer, I'm staying out of it, but you should really apologize to Rachel and your mom." My email inbox contained more evidence of Rachel's campaign. In my spam folder, I found dozens of emails Rachel had sent impersonating me to various family members over the past month. Small complaints at first, then increasingly erratic messages, laying the groundwork for everyone to believe I was unstable and vindictive. There were screenshots of fake text messages supposedly from me to Rachel. "You've always been Mom's favorite. Now you're trying to take my apartment too. Stay away from MY building and MY landlord. You'll regret coming back to Portland and ruining my life again." Messages I never wrote. Conversations that never happened, all designed to make me look unhinged and jealous. Lisa arrived with leftovers from her family's Christmas dinner and sat with me at her kitchen table as I showed her the mounting evidence. "This is beyond family drama," Lisa said, examining the emails. "This is identity theft. This is forgery. You need to talk to the police." "Against my own sister? My mother would never forgive me." "Your mother is already helping your sister steal your home," Lisa pointed out bluntly. "What exactly are you trying to preserve here?" She was right. But the idea of taking legal action against my family felt impossible. I'd spent my entire life seeking my mother's approval. Could I really file charges against her golden child? As if on cue, a notification appeared on my phone. Rachel had posted again on social media, a selfie in front of my apartment building. "So grateful to Mom for helping me find stability after a challenging year. #fresh start, #family, #blessed." My mother's public reply twisted the knife, always protecting my children from harm. Some people don't understand that family means supporting each other, not tearing each other down. The comments from family and friends poured in, praising my mother's generosity and Rachel's resilience. Not one person questioned why Rachel was moving into MY apartment building, into MY apartment. Then came the final betrayal. A bank notification. Security deposit transfer complete. My $2,200 deposit had been transferred to an account under Rachel's name, with my forged authorization. I showed Lisa the notification, my hand shaking. "That's it," she said, pulling out her phone. "I'm calling Catherine right now. This isn't about family anymore. This is about fraud." That night, after the kids were asleep, I completely broke down. Decades of similar betrayals flooded back. Rachel taking credit for my school projects, Rachel accidentally spilling bleach on my prom dress, Rachel dating my college boyfriend after we broke up. Always with my mother's tacit approval, always with the family rallying around Rachel while I was told to be the bigger person and stop being so sensitive. I cried until my body ached, until tissues piled around me like snow, until Lisa gently covered me with a blanket as I finally fell into exhausted sleep. Morning came with painful clarity. I couldn't fight my family using the old rules, emotional appeals, reason, familial obligation. They had changed the game entirely. If I wanted to protect myself and my children, I needed to change too. I looked at Emma and Jacob sleeping peacefully in the guest bed, unaware that their home was being stolen by their grandmother and aunt. My responsibility was to them, not to a mother who had never truly supported me or a sister who was willing to make children homeless at Christmas. I won't let them take everything from me again, I whispered to the morning light streaming through unfamiliar curtains. The day after Christmas, Boxing Day, I made my decision. After arranging for Lisa to watch Emma and Jacob, I drove to my parents' house alone. My heart pounded as I parked behind the now familiar lineup of family cars. Everyone was still there, celebrating without us. I had spent the morning gathering evidence, printouts of the forged emails, screenshots of bank transfers, George's written statement confirming I had never personally contacted him about any lease termination. I carried it all in a manila folder, along with the eviction notice from my door. No one answered my first knock. I knocked again, louder, more insistent. Finally, my stepfather Robert opened the door, surprise evident on his face. "Amanda? What are you doing here?" "I need to speak with everyone," I said firmly, walking past him into the foyer before he could stop me. The family was gathered in the living room, my mother perched regally on her favorite armchair, Rachel beside her on the love seat, Michael and his wife Natalie on the couch. The Christmas tree still glittered with lights, presents scattered beneath it. My nephew Tyler played with a new toy truck on the carpet. My mother's eyes narrowed when she saw me. "I'm surprised you'd show your face here after what you've done." Rachel immediately teared up, the performance so convincing I might have believed it myself if I didn't know better. "How could you do this to me at Christmas, Amanda? Your own sister." I remained standing, refusing the subtle power play of taking a lower seat. "I think it's time we all heard the truth," I said, opening my folder. "I have evidence that Rachel has been impersonating me, forging my signature, and committing fraud. Here we go with the accusations." My mother sighed dramatically. "Always the victim, Amanda." "Mom, please," Michael interjected. "Let's hear what she has to say." I placed George's written statement on the coffee table. George Winters confirmed that I never contacted him about Rachel's lease. The emails were sent from my account after it was accessed without my permission. My mother waved dismissively. "Rachel explained everything. She needed help, and you refused to give it." "Help with what, exactly?" I asked, turning to Rachel. "What happened in New York, Rachel? Why did you really come back to Portland?" Rachel's eyes darted to our mother, a silent communication passing between them. "I just needed a change," Rachel said carefully. "The marketing industry is very cutthroat." "Rachel has always been ambitious," my mother added quickly. "Sometimes that means making career adjustments." I pulled out my next piece of evidence, an email from Rachel's former roommate Jessica that had arrived that morning in response to my desperate inquiry. "Rachel didn't leave New York for a career adjustment," I said, reading from the printout. "She was fired for embezzling from her company. Her roommates evicted her when she couldn't pay rent for 3 months. Sound familiar?" The room went silent. Michael straightened, looking between Rachel and me. "That's a lie," Rachel said. But her voice lacked conviction. "Jessica says you pulled the same scheme there, forged her signature to break the lease and steal her security deposit." "That's ridiculous," my mother interjected. "Rachel would never." "Did you know about this, Mom?" I interrupted, meeting her eyes directly. "Did you know Rachel was fired for stealing? That she had nowhere to go? Is that why you helped her steal my apartment?" My mother's momentary hesitation told me everything. Rachel explained that she needed help, my mother said carefully. "She made a mistake at work that was misinterpreted." "Embezzlement isn't a misinterpretation," I countered. "And stealing my home isn't help." Rachel's tears had vanished, replaced by a calculating look I recognized from childhood, the expression she wore when backed into a corner. "You've always had it easy with your perfect little family," she snapped. "Some of us have had to work for everything we've gotten." "Easy?" I laughed incredulously. Being a single mother struggling to make ends meet while you posted about champagne brunches in Manhattan? That's your definition of easy. Girls, please, Robert attempted to intervene. But my mother silenced him with a look. Rachel needed a fresh start, my mother stated, as if this explained everything. I did what any mother would do. And what about your other daughter? I asked quietly. What about your grandchildren? Did you consider what would happen to us when you helped Rachel steal our home? The room fell silent again. Even Rachel had the grace to look uncomfortable. I've already co-signed Rachel's lease for your apartment, my mother finally said, lifting her chin defiantly. George agreed to expedite the process as a personal favor to me. The betrayal was so complete, so breathtaking, that for a moment I couldn't speak. My own mother had actively participated in making her grandchildren homeless at Christmas. Michael broke the silence. Mom, this is wrong and you know it. His voice was quiet but firm. Amanda has children. You can't just throw them out on the street. My mother turned on him instantly. Don't you start now. This family has always stuck together. This isn't sticking together, Michael argued. This is choosing Rachel over Amanda. Again. That again hung in the air, heavy with decades of history. For the first time, I felt the solidarity of someone else seeing the dynamic that had shaped our family. I gathered my evidence back into the folder, suddenly bone-tired. The years of seeking approval, of making excuses, of accepting less than I deserved, it all crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. You've chosen who matters to you, I said to my mother. I won't beg for love anymore. I turned to leave, my heart simultaneously breaking and hardening with each step toward the door. Don't expect us to help when you're homeless, my mother called after me. Her final attempt to assert control. I paused in the doorway, looking back at the tableau of my family, my mother rigid with anger, Rachel calculating her next move, Michael conflicted, Robert uncomfortable but silent. The Christmas tree lights blinked cheerfully, oblivious to the destruction of our family. Merry Christmas, I said softly, and closed the door behind me. In my car, parked in front of my parents' house, I broke down completely. My body shook with sobs as the full weight of what had happened crashed over me. My own mother had conspired to make her grandchildren homeless. My sister had committed fraud and identity theft against me. The family I'd spent my life trying to please had discarded me without hesitation. I couldn't drive in the state. I called Lisa, who arrived 20 minutes later to find me still crying in the driver's seat. Oh, honey, she said, opening my car door. What happened? I could barely speak through the tears. They knew. Everything. Mom co-signed. Rachel's taking my apartment. They don't care about the kids. Lisa helped me into her car and drove me back to her house, where Emma and Jacob were happily playing video games with her husband Mark, blissfully unaware that their world was collapsing. We're going to fix this, Lisa said firmly. Mark's brother is friends with Catherine Marshall. She's the best tenant rights attorney in Portland. I've already called her. She can see you tomorrow morning. The next day, Catherine's office was a haven of calm professionalism. While Lisa watched the kids, I laid out the entire situation, the forged emails, the fake lease termination, the transferred security deposit. My mother's admission of co-signing Rachel's new lease for my apartment. Catherine listened intently, taking notes and occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, she leaned forward. Amanda, what your sister did is illegal. Identity theft, forgery, fraud, these are criminal offenses. What your mother did in facilitating this is potentially criminal as well. I can't send my mother and sister to jail, I protested weakly. What you can do, Catherine countered, is protect yourself and your children. The lease termination is fraudulent. George cannot legally evict you based on forged documents. And Rachel cannot move into an apartment that is legally leased to you. She outlined our immediate steps. File a police report for identity theft and forgery. Send a formal legal letter to George challenging the lease termination. freeze my credit and bank accounts to prevent further fraud, and document all communication with my family. But what if George sides with my mother? They've been friends for years. George can be friends with whoever he wants. But if he tries to enforce a fraudulent lease termination, he'll be breaking the law. Friendship won't protect him from that. I left Catherine's office with a strange feeling, part grief, part determination. I had spent my life avoiding conflict with my mother and Rachel. Now I was preparing for legal battle against them. That afternoon, I met with George at his office, Catherine beside me. His usual friendly demeanor had been replaced by cautious professionalism. Amanda, I'm sorry about this situation. But the lease termination was processed according to standard procedures. Catherine placed a folder on his desk. My client never authorized any lease termination. These are forged documents, Mr. Winters. Enforcing them would constitute wrongful eviction, which carries significant legal penalties in Oregon. George shifted uncomfortably. I have emails from an email account that was accessed without my client's authorization. We filed a police report this morning for identity theft and forgery. The mention of police involvement changed George's expression entirely. I'm just trying to avoid getting caught in family drama. This isn't drama, I said quietly. This is fraud. Someone forged my signature and tried to steal my home. George looked between us, weighing his options. Finally, he sighed. What do you want me to do? Rescind the fraudulent lease termination immediately, Catherine answered. Confirm in writing that Amanda's original lease remains in effect. Return the security deposit that was illegally transferred. And provide copies of all communication regarding this matter for the police investigation. By the time we left his office, I had written confirmation that my lease remained valid and a check for my return security deposit. The relief was overwhelming. My phone had been buzzing incessantly. My mother's voicemail was cold and manipulative. I can't believe you'd put your sister through this after everything she's been through. This vindictiveness is exactly why we needed space from you at Christmas. I deleted it without responding. That evening, I had my first session with Dr. Meredith Cooper, a therapist specializing in family trauma. Unlike previous therapy attempts focused on managing my reactions to my family, Dr. Cooper zeroed in on the core issue. What you're describing is a lifelong pattern of emotional abuse from your mother, with your sister as both participant and weapon. The Christmas rejection and apartment scheme aren't isolated incidents, they're escalations of established patterns. It was both devastating and validating to hear someone name what I had experienced. Years of dismissal, comparison, conditional love, and gaslighting had left me permanently seeking approval I would never receive. Your mother is showing classic narcissistic traits, Dr. Cooper continued. The golden child/scapegoat dynamic between you and your sister is textbook. Breaking free from these patterns is difficult but essential work. As I drove home from the session, my phone rang. Michael, can we meet? He asked without preamble. Alone. There's something you need to know. We met at a coffee shop the next day. Michael looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes. I've been doing a lot of thinking since Christmas, he started, rotating his coffee cup nervously. I've watched this happen our whole lives and said nothing. Mom always favored Rachel. Always believed her over you, always made excuses for her behavior. Why now? I asked. What's changed? Michael reached into his messenger bag and pulled out a manila envelope. After you left, I started asking questions. Rachel's story wasn't adding up. So I did some digging. Inside the envelope were printouts of emails between Rachel and various people in New York, her former employer, roommates, creditors. The picture they painted was damning. Rachel hadn't just been fired. She was facing potential criminal charges for embezzling nearly $50,000 from client accounts. Her roommates hadn't just evicted her. They had filed a police report for stolen property and forged checks. She's done this before, Amanda. Multiple times. The apartment scheme isn't new. It's her pattern. Later that day, I received an email from Jessica, Rachel's former roommate in New York. She had found my contact information through social media after I reached out. "I'm so sorry this is happening to you too," she wrote. "Rachel did exactly the same thing to me and our other roommate Zoe last year. Forged emails, fake lease termination, stolen security deposit. We filed police reports, but she had already left the state. If you need a statement for your case, I'm happy to provide one." With mounting evidence and support from Catherine, I made a difficult decision. We sent a formal cease and desist letter to Rachel and my parents, outlining the fraudulent activities and demanding all attempts to take my apartment cease immediately. The police officially opened a fraud investigation, with Detective Caroline Murphy assigned to the case. Identity theft cases between family members are unfortunately common, she explained during our meeting. But this level of coordination and planning is unusual. As December drew to a close, I found myself in an unexpected position of strength. My lease was secure. Rachel's attempts to claim my apartment had been legally blocked. The family narrative was shifting as Michael shared the truth with extended relatives. For the first time in my life, I wasn't desperately seeking my mother's approval or trying to match Rachel's facade of success. I was standing firmly in my own truth, protecting my children, and refusing to accept abuse disguised as family loyalty. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, it was truly mine. January passed in a blur of legal proceedings and emotional processing. Rachel accepted a plea deal for the forgery charges, receiving probation and court-ordered restitution instead of jail time. My mother and stepfather continued to defend her despite the legal verdict, insisting she had been pushed to desperate measures by my hostility. I made the painful but necessary decision to maintain no contact with my mother and Rachel. The childhood hope of maternal love and approval had been my weakness for too long, the vulnerability they exploited repeatedly. Dr. Cooper helped me understand that grief was natural. I was mourning the mother I needed, but never had, the sister who could have been a friend but chose to be a rival. As Valentine's Day approached, I focused on creating new traditions with Emma and Jacob. We made heart-shaped cookies from scratch, decorated our apartment with paper chains, and planned a special movie night with hot chocolate and all the pillows and blankets we could find. "Is Grandma still sick?" Jacob asked one evening as we worked on Valentine's for his classmates. I had been as honest as possible with the children while keeping explanations age-appropriate. "Grandma isn't sick in her body," I explained. "But sometimes people can be sick in the way they treat others. Grandma and Aunt Rachel made some very bad choices that hurt our family. Will they ever get better?" Emma asked, carefully cutting out a red paper heart. "I don't know, sweetheart. I hope so. But until they do, it's okay for us to keep our distance to stay safe." My weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Cooper became anchors in the storm of rebuilding my life. We worked through the patterns of my childhood, the constant comparison to Rachel, the impossibly high standards, the love that always seemed conditional on performance and compliance. "You're breaking a generational cycle," Dr. Cooper told me during a particularly difficult session. "By refusing to accept emotional abuse for yourself and protecting your children from it, you're creating a healthier future for your family." My relationship with Michael strengthened as he began his own therapy journey. He had always been the peacekeeper in our family, the one who tried to smooth things over and avoid conflict. Now he was recognizing how that role had enabled the dysfunction to continue. "I should have stood up for you years ago," he admitted during a lunch together. "I saw how Mom treated you differently. I knew it wasn't right. We were kids," I reminded him. And later, we were both just trying to survive the family dynamics we'd been raised in. Work improved as well. The clarity and boundaries in my personal life somehow translated to professional confidence. I landed 2 major client contracts that brought financial stability I hadn't experienced since before the divorce. I was finally able to build a modest savings account and take Emma and Jacob for a weekend trip to the coast, a luxury that would have been unthinkable months earlier. Lisa and Ryan. The man I had been casually dating before the Christmas catastrophe became pillars of support. Ryan had witnessed the aftermath of my family's betrayal and, instead of running from the drama, had stepped up with practical help and emotional support. He fixed my car when it needed repairs I couldn't afford, brought groceries when I was overwhelmed with legal meetings, and never once made me feel like my family chaos was a burden. "This is what real family looks like," Lisa said during our first chosen family dinner in March. We had gathered at her house, me, Emma, Jacob, Ryan, Lisa, her husband Mark, and their daughter Zoe. The table was loud with conversation and laughter, everyone passing dishes and sharing stories of their week. Emma and Jacob thrived in this environment of honest, supportive relationships. Their questions about their grandmother and aunt gradually decreased as new traditions and connections filled the void. Jacob's kindergarten teacher commented on his increased confidence, while Emma's art reflected brighter colors and happier themes. The final confrontation came unexpectedly in April when my mother appeared uninvited at my apartment. I opened the door to find her standing there, perfectly coiffed as always, an expression of determined patience on her face. "This has gone on long enough," she said without greeting. "It's time to put this foolishness behind us." For months earlier, those words would have sent me spiraling into guilt and self-doubt. Now I felt only a calm certainty. "No," I said simply. My mother blinked, clearly unprepared for direct refusal. "Excuse me?" "No," I repeated. "You're not welcome in our lives until you acknowledge the harm you've caused and make genuine amends." "I'm your mother," she said, as if this single fact overrode all other considerations. "Yes, you are. And you helped Rachel try to make your grandchildren homeless at Christmas. You chose who matters to you, Mom." "I'm choosing who matters to me." Her face contorted with familiar righteous anger. "After everything I've done for you." "Goodbye, Mom," I said firmly, closing the door despite her protests. I leaned against the closed door, expecting tears or panic, but feeling only a surprising peace. The encounter that would have devastated me months ago now felt like the necessary closing of a chapter. A week later, a letter arrived from my stepfather, Robert. Unlike my mother's demands and Rachel's manipulations, his words expressed genuine regret. "I should have done more to prevent what happened," he wrote. "I've enabled your mother's behavior for years, and I'm starting to recognize the damage that's caused. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that not everyone believes the narrative that's been created about you." Spring arrived with new beginnings. We celebrated Emma's 11th birthday with a backyard party at Lisa's house. Michael and his family came, bringing Tyler to play with his cousins. Ryan helped organize games and built a piñata shaped like Emma's favorite animal, an otter. During my final therapy session before switching to monthly maintenance visits, Dr. Cooper asked about my biggest breakthrough. "I think it's realizing I don't need my mother's approval to be whole," I answered after consideration. "I spent my entire life trying to earn love that should have been freely given. Now I'm surrounded by people who love me and my children without conditions or competitions." When Jacob brought home an art project titled My Family, I studied the crayon figures holding hands, me, Emma, Michael, Lisa, and Ryan. My mother, Rachel, and Robert were noticeably absent. "Is this everyone in our family?" I asked carefully. Jacob nodded confidently. "These are the people who love us all the time, not just when we do things right." Out of the mouths of babes. Indeed. In May, we moved to a slightly bigger apartment in the same complex. Lisa, Ryan, Michael, and several friends helped with the move, turning work into a celebration with music and pizza. As I unpacked in the new space, I found an old family photo taken at Christmas years ago. My parents, Michael, Rachel, and me, all smiling stiffly for the camera. I placed it in a drawer rather than throwing it away, acknowledging the past without letting it dominate my present. Later that evening, I looked around at the new gathering in my living room, the chosen family who had shown up when it mattered most. There was laughter inside jokes, genuine warmth. This was what family truly meant, not perfect genetics or obligatory holidays, but people who chose each other daily through actions and love. The peace I felt wasn't about forgetting the pain or pretending the betrayal hadn't happened. It was about building something new and better from the ruins of what had been lost. I had finally let go of what family should be and embraced what family truly is, a circle of love and protection that starts with how we treat ourselves and extends to those we choose to include in our most intimate space. Most importantly, I had broken the cycle for Emma and Jacob. They would grow up knowing they were worthy of unconditional love, that healthy boundaries weren't selfish, and that real family protected rather than exploited vulnerability. The healing wasn't complete. Such deep wounds never heal perfectly, but I was no longer bleeding from them. And that, I realized, was victory enough. Have you ever had to create boundaries with toxic family members? What helped you find the strength to stand up for yourself? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and healing. Remember that family is about love and respect, not just DNA. Thank you for listening. And I wish you all the courage to create the family you deserve, whether they're related by blood or by choice. My name is Morgan Reynolds, and I'm 32 years old. I stood in the pouring rain outside my father's mansion after his funeral, locked out by my stepmother Victoria. The pain of being prevented from seeing him during his final days was still raw. Inside, Victoria was announcing to everyone that my father had left her everything, including the $30 million mansion. She had security escort my brother Ryan and me out like criminals. As I walked away, my phone rang. It was my father's personal lawyer. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to hear how I turned the tables on the woman who tried to steal my family's legacy. Growing up in that mansion with my father Richard and my brother Ryan was magical. The sprawling estate in Connecticut had been our sanctuary, especially after we lost our mother to breast cancer when I was 10 and Ryan was 8. The tragedy brought the three of us closer than most families could ever imagine. We became a tight-knit unit, supporting each other through the darkest days of grief. My father was an extraordinary man. He built his tech company, Reynolds Innovations, from nothing but an idea in our garage to a multi-million-dollar empire. Despite his success, he never let wealth change who he was at his core, a loving father who always put his children first. Every Sunday without fail, we had family dinner together, regardless of how busy his schedule was. During those meals, we would talk about everything and anything, from school projects to business decisions. He valued our opinions, even when we were young. As we grew older, our bond only strengthened. Dad took us on trips around the world, expanding our horizons and showing us different cultures. He taught us the value of hard work, compassion, and integrity. When I decided to pursue art rather than business, he supported me wholeheartedly, even setting up a studio in the east wing of the mansion. Ryan followed more in Dad's footsteps, studying business and eventually joining Reynolds Innovations, making Dad beam with pride. Our life wasn't perfect, but it was filled with love and mutual respect. The mansion wasn't just a house, it was the physical embodiment of our family's journey. Every room held memories: the library where Dad taught us to play chess, the kitchen where we attempted to recreate Mom's recipes, the garden where we planted a tree on each of our birthdays. It was our home in every sense of the word. Everything changed 4 years ago, when Dad met Victoria at a charity gala. I was 28 then, Ryan 26. Victoria was 45, 15 years younger than Dad. A former model with striking features and a charming demeanor. She had recently divorced her second husband, a fact we discovered later rather than from her. Dad was immediately smitten. After being alone for nearly 2 decades since Mom died, he seemed rejuvenated by Victoria's attention. Their courtship was a whirlwind. Within 6 months, they were married in an extravagant ceremony that felt more like a society event than a family celebration. Dad seemed happy, so Ryan and I tried to be supportive despite our reservations. We wanted to believe Victoria genuinely loved him. The red flags appeared almost immediately after the honeymoon. Victoria's spending was excessive even by our family's standards. Designer clothes, jewelry, exotic vacations, and a brand new sports car were just the beginning. Dad never mentioned it, but Ryan, who worked in the finance department of the company, noticed the significant increase in personal expenditures. More concerning was how Victoria began isolating Dad from his friends and, gradually, from us. Long-standing dinner engagements with his business partners were canceled. His weekly golf games with friends he'd had for decades mysteriously disappeared from his schedule. The Sunday family dinners that had been sacred to us for years became less frequent, with Victoria always having an excuse why they needed to be postponed or cut short. When we were around, Victoria was always present, hovering over Dad, answering questions directed at him, and subtly steering conversations away from any meaningful topics. She would place herself physically between Dad and us, a visual representation of the emotional barrier she was creating. At first, we gave her the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps she was just eager to build her new life with Dad. Maybe she felt insecure around us, as we represented such a significant part of his life before her. We tried including her, inviting her to lunch, asking about her interests, attempting to forge a relationship. Victoria would respond with surface-level politeness, but maintain an emotional distance. Behind the smile, there was always a coldness in her eyes when she looked at Ryan and me. When Dad wasn't watching, the facade would slip entirely. More than once, I caught her glaring at me with undisguised contempt when Dad left the room. As months passed, Victoria's behavior toward us changed more dramatically. She began making subtle digs about our relationship with Dad, implying we were too dependent on him. She questioned my career choices, suggesting my art was merely a hobby Dad indulged rather than a legitimate profession. With Ryan, she would undermine his contributions to the company, hinting to Dad that perhaps Ryan was being given opportunities he hadn't earned. The mansion itself began to transform under Victoria's influence. Family photos disappeared from walls, replaced by modern art that held no sentimental value. Mom's antique furniture, which Dad had preserved lovingly for years, was sold off or moved to storage. Our childhood rooms were redecorated into guest suites without our knowledge or consent. When I confronted Dad about these changes, he seemed confused, insisting that Victoria was just trying to modernize the house and that I was being overly sentimental. It was as if he couldn't see what was happening right in front of him. The father who had always valued our feelings above all else was suddenly dismissing them entirely. Ryan and I watched helplessly as Victoria systematically dismantled the life we had built with our father. The warm, loving man who had raised us was slowly being replaced by someone we barely recognized, someone who viewed his own children with a growing suspicion planted by his new wife. Victoria was a master manipulator. She never showed her true colors to Dad, saving her most venomous behavior for moments when he wasn't present. When conflicts arose, she would twist the narrative so skillfully that Dad began to see Ryan and me as the antagonists in situations she had orchestrated. I remember one particular incident that showcased her tactics perfectly. I had brought Dad a birthday gift, a hand-painted portrait of him with Mom and us as children, based on an old photograph. When I presented it, Victoria immediately commented that it was morbid to dwell on the past and suggested it would make Dad depressed. When I protested, she burst into tears, claiming I was attacking her for trying to protect Dad's mental health. Dad ended up comforting her while my gift was set aside, never to be displayed. These manipulations became more frequent and sophisticated. If Ryan mentioned concerns about a business decision, Victoria would later tell Dad that Ryan was questioning his leadership abilities. If I called to check on Dad's health, Victoria would reframe it as me interfering in their marriage. She played the victim masterfully, making herself appear as the devoted wife constantly under attack from ungrateful stepchildren. Dad began calling less, and when we called him, Victoria often answered, claiming he was busy, resting, or otherwise unavailable. Our texts went unanswered for days, with eventual replies that seemed formal and distant, nothing like Dad's usual warm communication style. We suspected Victoria was monitoring or even controlling his phone. Family gatherings became increasingly uncomfortable. Victoria would invite her own friends and family members, who would dominate the events while Ryan and I were treated as peripheral guests rather than the children of the host. Dad seemed oblivious to this dynamic, laughing with Victoria's friends while barely interacting with us. The mansion, once our haven, became a place of tension. Entering required calling ahead, with Victoria often claiming it wasn't a good time for a visit. Staff members who had known us since childhood were replaced with new employees loyal to Victoria, who treated us with formal politeness rather than the familiarity of our long-term household staff. About 2 years into their marriage, we began noticing concerning changes in Dad's health. He had always been vibrant and energetic despite his age, but he started appearing tired at company meetings. He lost weight, his skin took on a grayish pallor, and he seemed to have less stamina for activities he previously enjoyed. When Ryan discreetly asked him about it, Dad brushed off the concerns, saying he was just getting older. Victoria insisted nothing was wrong, claiming she was taking excellent care of him. But Margaret, Dad's assistant of 15 years who had not yet been replaced, confidentially told Ryan that Dad had missed several doctor's appointments without explanation and that Victoria was now managing his medication. This revelation alarmed us enough to confront Victoria directly. We chose a moment when Dad was resting to express our concerns about his health and ask what the doctors had said. Victoria's response was chilling. With a cold smile, she informed us that Richard's health was now her concern, not ours, and that we needed to stop trying to create problems in their marriage. When we pressed the issue, she threatened to convince Dad we were trying to interfere in their life if we didn't back off. When Dad joined us later, appearing frail but smiling, Victoria immediately transformed into a doting wife. When we attempted to bring up our health concerns, she skillfully redirected the conversation, and Dad, seemingly unaware of her manipulation, followed her conversational lead. After that confrontation, the distance between us and Dad grew exponentially. Invitations to family events became rare. Our calls went straight to voicemail. The company's annual Christmas party, which Dad had always insisted we attend, came and went without an invitation for the first time in our adult lives. Ryan attempted to maintain contact through work, but Victoria convinced Dad to reduce his direct oversight of the company, delegating many of his responsibilities to other executives who reported to him through her. Even Ryan's professional access to our father was being systematically eliminated. I tried sending letters and emails, hoping to bypass Victoria's phone screening, but the responses, when they came, were brief and impersonal. I couldn't be certain Dad was even reading my messages himself. The emotional toll was immense. It felt like grieving someone who was still alive but unreachable. The few times we managed to see Dad in person, Victoria never left his side, controlling the conversation and limiting our time together. Dad's once sharp mind seemed dulled, his responses slower and less coherent. When I mentioned memories from our childhood, he seemed momentarily confused before Victoria would quickly change the subject. We were being erased from our father's life, and Victoria was ensuring he barely noticed our absence. The mansion that contained all our family history was being systematically purged of our existence, and we were powerless to stop it. We were watching our father slip away, not just physically but emotionally, and the woman responsible was making sure we couldn't intervene. The devastating news came not from our father or Victoria, but from James, Dad's oldest friend and golfing buddy. James called Ryan one evening, his voice heavy with concern. He had run into Dad at the hospital during his wife's checkup and was shocked by his appearance. Dad had admitted to James that he had been diagnosed with an aggressive form of pancreatic cancer 3 months earlier. James was stunned we didn't know and felt we needed to be informed immediately. The revelation hit us like a physical blow. 3 months. Our father had been battling cancer for 3 months, and Victoria had kept it from us. The betrayal was unfathomable. Ryan immediately tried calling Dad, only to have Victoria answer and claim he was sleeping and couldn't be disturbed. When Ryan demanded to know about the cancer diagnosis, Victoria's voice turned cold. She accused James of breaking their confidence and informed us that Dad didn't want us involved in his illness. She claimed he didn't need the stress of our dramatic reactions during his treatment. We knew this couldn't be true. Our father would never keep something so significant from us. Victoria was isolating him at his most vulnerable time, when he needed his family most. Ryan and I immediately drove to the mansion, determined to see our father regardless of Victoria's objections. When we arrived, we were met by a security guard we didn't recognize. He informed us that Mrs. Reynolds had instructed that no visitors were allowed, especially not us. When we insisted on seeing our father, explaining he was seriously ill, the guard remained unmoved. He had his orders. We weren't getting in. Desperate and angry, we considered calling the police. But what could we report? We had no proof we were being kept from our father against his will. For all legal purposes, Victoria was his wife and caretaker, with every right to determine who could visit their private residence. Instead, we contacted a lawyer. We explained the situation and asked what rights we had to see our ailing father. The answer was disheartening. Without evidence that Dad was being mistreated or held against his will, we had very little legal recourse. The lawyer suggested writing a formal request for visitation, which might be harder for Victoria to dismiss than our calls and texts. We sent registered letters requesting time with our father, explicitly stating our knowledge of his diagnosis and our desire to support him through his treatment. The letters were returned unopened, marked refused. Ryan then attempted to use his position at Reynolds Innovations to gain information. He requested Dad's medical insurance records, hoping to at least understand the severity of the diagnosis and what treatments were being pursued. He was blocked at every turn, with Victoria having been added as the primary contact for all of Dad's medical and insurance matters. Through considerable effort and calling in favors from contacts at the hospital, Ryan eventually obtained minimal information. The diagnosis was as bad as we feared, stage 4 pancreatic cancer with metastasis to the liver. The prognosis was poor, with statistics suggesting most patients in his condition had months rather than years. The thought of our father facing this diagnosis without us by his side was unbearable. I spent nights awake, imagining him in pain, perhaps even asking for us, with Victoria feeding him lies about why we weren't there. Ryan became obsessed with finding a way to reach Dad, researching experimental treatments and second opinions we couldn't share. In desperation, Ryan attempted a direct confrontation with Victoria. He went to the mansion when he knew she had a regular spa appointment, hoping to catch Dad alone. Instead, he found the security team had been expanded, with clear instructions that neither Ryan nor I was to be admitted under any circumstances. Ryan's frustration boiled over into anger. He threatened legal action, media exposure, anything to see our father. The head of security, unmoved, suggested Ryan leave before they called the police for trespassing. Defeated and furious, Ryan left, calling me in tears from his car. As weeks passed, our anxiety grew. We sent emails, left voicemails, even attempted to contact Dad through his medical team, all to no avail. Victoria had created an impenetrable barrier between us and our father during what could be his final days. Then, unexpectedly, my phone rang one afternoon with Dad's number. I answered immediately, my heart racing. It was Dad, his voice weak but unmistakable. He said he missed us and asked how we were doing. As if we were just catching up after a busy week rather than months of enforced separation. I tried to express my concern about his health, but he spoke over me, saying Victoria was taking excellent care of him and that the treatments were going well. When I asked directly if we could visit him, there was a pause, then what sounded like muffled voices. When Dad spoke again, his tone had changed. He said it wasn't a good time for visitors, that his immune system was compromised, and Victoria was protecting him from potential infections. Before I could respond, he said he needed to rest, but would call again soon. The call ended abruptly, leaving me with the distinct impression that Victoria had been monitoring the entire conversation, perhaps even prompting his responses. That call was the last time I heard my father's voice. 3 weeks later, Ryan received a terse email from Victoria's personal assistant informing us that Richard Reynolds had passed away peacefully in his sleep. The funeral would be held in 2 days at St. Mark's Church. The email closed with a coldly formal note that our attendance would be accommodated. Our father was gone, and we hadn't been given the chance to say goodbye. We hadn't held his hand, told him we loved him, or thanked him for being the extraordinary father he had been. Victoria had stolen those final moments from us, moments we could never get back. The grief was overwhelming, compounded by anger and regret. As we prepared for the funeral, we steeled ourselves to face the woman who had kept us from our father in his greatest time of need. St. Mark's Church was filled beyond capacity the day of my father's funeral. Ryan and I arrived early, expecting to be seated with family in the front rows. Instead, a somber-faced usher directed us to seats in the back, behind dozens of people we didn't recognize. When Ryan protested, explaining we were Richard's children, the usher apologetically informed us that the seating arrangement had been predetermined by Mrs. Reynolds. From our position at the back, we watched as Victoria made her entrance, a vision of theatrical grief, in an expensive black designer dress and dark sunglasses, despite the dimness of the church interior. She was surrounded by people who rushed to comfort her, most of whom I had never seen before. She didn't acknowledge our presence or even glance in our direction. The service was a painful experience. The eulogy, delivered by Victoria's brother rather than anyone who had known my father for more than 4 years, painted a picture of Richard Reynolds that was almost unrecognizable to us. He spoke of a man devoted to his new family, of Victoria's selfless care during his illness, and how their great love story had given Richard joy in his final years. There was barely a mention of his decades-long career building Reynolds Innovations, his philanthropic work, or the fact that he had 2 children. Ryan gripped my hand so tightly it hurt, his jaw clenched as we endured this rewriting of our father's life. I felt as though I was attending a stranger's funeral rather than my father's. When the time came for family members to place roses on the casket, Victoria went first, making a show of her grief with audible sobs. Then her family followed. Ryan and I waited for our turn, but it never came. The service moved on as if we weren't even there. After the church service, everyone was invited to the Reynolds mansion for the reception. As we approached the entrance, Victoria intercepted us in the foyer, finally acknowledging our existence. With a cold smile that didn't reach her eyes, she pulled us aside, away from the other guests. "I'm glad you could make it to the service," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "But before we continue, I think there's something you both should know." She paused for dramatic effect, looking between us with an expression of rehearsed regret. Richard updated his will shortly after our marriage. He left everything to me, including full ownership of the mansion and controlling interest in the company. Ryan started to speak, but Victoria raised a manicured hand to silence him. I know this must be disappointing for you both, she continued, but Richard and I discussed it at length. He felt you were both established enough to make your own way without his financial support. He wanted me to be taken care of in my grief. The audacity of her lies made my blood boil. This wasn't just about money or property, it was about her erasing our father's love for us, rewriting the story of our family to cast herself as the central character and us as footnotes. Victoria wasn't finished. She straightened her shoulders and delivered the final blow. And now, I think it's best if you both leave. This is a difficult day for me, and frankly, your presence is making it harder. This is my home now, and I get to decide who's welcome here. She then turned to address the gathering of mourners who had been watching our interaction with curious eyes. Everyone, she announced loudly, commanding the attention of the room. I want to thank you all for coming to support me today. As most of you know, Richard left everything to me, including this beautiful mansion we shared. It's worth over $30 million. But its real value is in the memories we created here. Her eyes flicked to us, a flash of triumph visible before she continued. Unfortunately, I must ask Richard's children to leave now. They've paid their respects, but this gathering is for those who were truly close to Richard in his final years. The public humiliation was complete. Dozens of eyes turned to us, some curious, some pitying, as Victoria signaled to security. 2 men approached us, making it clear we were to be escorted out. Ryan looked ready to create a scene, his face flushed with anger. I grabbed his arm, squeezing it in warning. This was neither the time nor place. Not when Victoria clearly held all the cards and was eager for us to give her an excuse to paint us as disruptive and disrespectful. Let's go, I whispered. This isn't over. As we were led to the door, I turned back to look at Victoria. She was watching us with undisguised satisfaction, already turning to accept more condolences from her supporters. What struck me was how she had miscalculated. If she had shown even a pretense of kindness or inclusion, we might have been caught off guard. Instead, her cruelty and public humiliation had only strengthened our resolve. Outside the mansion, Ryan exploded with fury. She can't do this. That's our home. Our father's company. How could Dad have left everything to her? It doesn't make sense. I felt surprisingly calm. It doesn't make sense because it isn't true, I said, checking my phone. And Victoria has no idea what's coming. My phone rang at that exact moment. The screen displayed Samuel Bennett, my father's personal attorney for over 20 years. I smiled as I answered, walking away from the mansion that Victoria thought she had claimed as her prize. She had put on quite a performance, but the final act was yet to come. 18 months before my father's death. When Victoria had already been his wife for over 2 years, he asked Ryan and me to meet him at his lake house. It was unusual. Victoria rarely left his side by then. He explained that she was visiting her sister for the weekend, giving us a rare opportunity to speak privately. I'll never forget the look on his face when we arrived. Sitting on the deck overlooking the water, he seemed both the powerful father I'd always known and somehow diminished, a man carrying a heavy burden. He hugged us tightly, apologizing for the distance that had grown between us. I've made a terrible mistake, he admitted once we were settled. Victoria isn't who I thought she was. Ryan immediately suggested divorce. But Dad shook his head. It's not that simple. There are complications, legal and otherwise. Victoria has been very careful about what she puts in writing or says in front of others. And there are aspects of our prenuptial agreement that would be challenging. He wouldn't elaborate further on those complications. But the haunted look in his eyes told me there was more to the story than legal entanglements. I wondered if Victoria had something on him, some leverage that made him feel trapped. But I didn't ask you here to discuss my marriage, he continued. I asked you here because I need to protect both of you and everything I've built. He revealed that Victoria had been pressuring him to change his will, to leave everything to her with only token inheritances for Ryan and me. She'd been suggesting that we were using him for his money, that we didn't truly care about him. Dad assured us he never believed her accusations, but he had pretended to consider her suggestions to keep peace. I want you to know that I'm taking steps to ensure she can't take what rightfully belongs to our family, he said, his voice strengthening with resolve. I've been working with Samuel Bennett to create a strategy that will protect both of you. Over the next several hours, Dad outlined his plan. He had already secretly transferred ownership of the mansion to Ryan and me through a complex legal structure that would only become apparent after his death. The transfer was buried under layers of trusts and holding companies, making it virtually impossible for Victoria to discover. The mansion has been in our family for 3 generations, Dad explained. It's where we scattered your mother's ashes in the rose garden. It's where you both grew up. I won't let it go to someone who doesn't understand its true value. He had done the same with the majority of his assets, including his controlling shares in Reynolds Innovations. On paper, he still appeared to control everything, but legally. Much of it already belonged to Ryan and me, held in trust until his passing. Victoria thinks she's going to walk away with everything, he said with a sad smile. She has no idea I've been one step ahead of her all along. We spent hours going through documents, signing papers, and discussing the legal intricacies of what Dad had arranged. He had thought of everything, from the family heirlooms to the charitable foundation he had established in our mother's name. Victoria would get enough to avoid suspicion or legal challenges, but the heart of the Reynolds legacy would remain with us. You can't tell anyone about this, Dad warned us. Not your partners, not your friends, not a soul. Victoria can never know until the time is right. We promised to keep his secret, as difficult as it would be to watch Victoria continue to believe she was winning. We understood the importance of maintaining the illusion until everything was legally secure. Before we left that day, Dad pulled out a safety deposit box key and handed it to me. There's more information in this box, including videos I've recorded explaining my decisions in my own words. Samuel has copies of everything, but I wanted you to have access as well. If anything happens to me, go to Samuel immediately. Don't confront Victoria on your own. He hugged us both again, longer this time. I'm so sorry for allowing her to come between us. I should have seen her for what she was much sooner. The guilt in his eyes broke my heart. It's not your fault, Dad, I assured him. She fooled a lot of people, not just you. In the months that followed, we maintained the charade. We continued our attempts to see Dad, knowing Victoria would block most of them. The few times we were allowed to visit, we pretended to be unaware of Dad's true feelings about his marriage. It was excruciating to watch Victoria play the devoted wife, knowing she was manipulating our father and plotting to steal our inheritance. But we kept our promise, biding our time. When Dad's health began to decline, our act became nearly impossible to maintain. The knowledge that Victoria was keeping us from our dying father while we held the key to undermining her entire plan was a burden almost too heavy to bear. I lost sleep, questioning whether we should confront her, force our way into seeing Dad. Ryan and I argued about it more than once, but each time we wavered. We remembered Dad's explicit instructions and the reasons behind them. He had created an elaborate plan to protect us and his legacy. Exposing what we knew too soon could jeopardize everything he had worked to secure. So we continued the painful waiting game, trusting in our father's foresight even as we grieved his decline from a distance. After Dad's death, as Victoria made her triumphant announcement at the funeral about inheriting everything, I felt an odd sense of calm. She thought she had won, that her years of manipulation had secured her the fortune she coveted. She had no idea that Dad had seen through her long ago and had meticulously crafted her downfall. As Ryan and I walked away from the mansion that day, I knew the time had finally come to open that safety deposit box and contact Samuel Bennett. Victoria's reign was about to end, and the real inheritors of Richard Reynolds' legacy were about to reclaim what was rightfully theirs. The morning after the funeral, Ryan and I met Samuel Bennett at his downtown office. Samuel had been Dad's attorney and friend for over 20 years, a distinguished man in his 60s with a reputation for both legal brilliance and unwavering loyalty. His handshake was firm as he ushered us into his private conference room. "I'm deeply sorry for your loss," he said sincerely. "Your father was an extraordinary man. I wish you could have been with him at the end." "Victoria made sure that wasn't possible," Ryan replied bitterly. Samuel nodded grimly. Richard was aware of what she was doing. It pained him greatly, but he was playing a long game to protect both of you and everything he built. He opened a thick folder on the conference table. "Victoria is currently operating under the assumption that Richard left everything to her. She's already contacted several of my colleagues about liquidating assets and transferring property titles." A cold anger settled in my stomach. "She didn't even wait until he was buried." "No, she didn't," Samuel confirmed. "But her plans are about to hit a significant roadblock." For the next 2 hours, Samuel walked us through the legal framework Dad had established. The mansion had been transferred to a trust in our names 18 months earlier, with the transfer documents post-dated to take effect immediately upon his death. The same applied to his controlling interest in Reynolds Innovations and the majority of his personal assets. Victoria had been left a respectable sum of money and some property in Aspen, enough to avoid any claim that she had been completely disinherited, but nowhere near the fortune she believed she had secured. The transfer had been executed through a series of complex legal maneuvers that kept it hidden from public records until now. "Your father recorded this video 6 months ago," Samuel said, turning his laptop toward us. "He wanted you to see it before we proceed." Dad appeared on screen, looking friendlier than when we'd last seen him, but with clear eyes and a determined expression. He explained his decisions in detail, stating explicitly that he was of sound mind and acting of his own free will. He spoke of his love for us, his regret at allowing Victoria to isolate him, and his determination that she would not profit from her manipulation. "Morgan, Ryan," he said toward the end, his eyes seeming to look directly at us, "I know the past few years have been painful. Victoria made sure of that. But never doubt that I loved you both every day of my life. Everything I built was always meant for you. I'm so proud of the people you've become. I only wish I'd been strong enough to see through Victoria's deception sooner." Tears streamed down my face as the video ended. Beside me, Ryan was struggling to maintain his composure. It was a vindication of everything we had felt, confirmation that our father had never stopped loving us despite Victoria's best efforts to convince him otherwise. Samuel gave us a moment before continuing. "There's more. Richard suspected Victoria might have been medicating him beyond what his doctors prescribed. He had blood tests done privately that showed concerning levels of sedatives not included in his treatment plan. This revelation stunned us both. We had suspected Victoria was controlling Dad's care, but the possibility that she had been drugging him was horrifying. "Is that enough for criminal charges?" Ryan asked, his voice tight with anger. "Possibly, but Richard didn't want to pursue that route unless absolutely necessary. He felt a public legal battle would only bring pain and scandal to your family. His priority was ensuring you received your inheritance and that Victoria was removed from your lives as cleanly as possible." Samuel laid out our options. We could confront Victoria privately with the documentation, giving her the chance to leave quietly with her modest inheritance. Or we could arrive with legal representatives and, if necessary, law enforcement to physically remove her from the property she now falsely claimed as her own. After discussion, we opted for the second approach. Victoria had shown no mercy in her treatment of us, particularly in preventing us from seeing Dad before his death and humiliating us at his funeral. She deserved no consideration now. The next morning, Ryan and I arrived at the mansion accompanied by Samuel, 2 additional attorneys from his firm, and 2 police officers who had been briefed on the situation. Victoria's security team, uncertain who to obey with their employer's status suddenly in question, reluctantly allowed our group to enter when presented with the legal documentation. We found Victoria in the sunroom, discussing redecorating plans with an interior designer. Her face registered shock at our appearance, quickly morphing into outrage. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, standing abruptly. "I told you both yesterday that you're not welcome here. This is my home now." Samuel stepped forward, extending a folder toward her. "Mrs. Reynolds, I'm Samuel Bennett, Richard's personal attorney. I'm here to inform you that you are mistaken about your ownership of this property. The mansion legally belongs to Morgan and Ryan Reynolds and has for some time." Victoria's face flushed. "That's absurd. Richard left everything to me. I have documentation from our estate planning attorney." "I'm afraid that documentation is outdated," Samuel replied calmly. "Richard executed a transfer of this property and the majority of his assets to his children 18 months ago. The transfer was structured to take effect immediately upon his death." Victoria snatched the folder, flipping through the documents with increasing agitation. "These are forgeries," she declared, throwing the papers down. "Richard would never do this to me. I was his wife. We have video testimony from Richard confirming his intentions," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "He knew exactly who you were, Victoria. He saw through you long ago." Her composure cracked further. "I don't believe you. I took care of him. I was the one by his side while you two were nowhere to be found. Because you kept us away," Ryan countered, his voice tight with controlled anger. "You prevented us from seeing our dying father. You changed his phone number, instructed staff to turn us away, and lied to him about our attempts to contact him." Victoria's face contorted with fury. "You can't prove any of that. It's your word against mine, and Richard isn't here to contradict me." Samuel cleared his throat. "Actually, Mrs. Reynolds, we have evidence of your interference as well. Richard had his assistant document every instance when you intercepted calls or prevented his children from visiting. We also have testimony from his former security staff before you replaced them." The color drained from Victoria's face. Her eyes darted around the room as if seeking an escape route. Then, abruptly, her demeanor changed. Her shoulders slumped and tears filled her eyes. "This isn't fair," she said, her voice breaking. "I gave Richard 4 years of my life. I took care of him when he was sick. I deserve something for that." "And you'll receive exactly what Richard intended for you," Samuel replied, unmoved by her performance. "A trust fund of $2 million and the Aspen property. The remainder of the estate returns to his children, as was always his plan." Victoria's false vulnerability vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Her eyes hardened, and her voice dropped to a venomous hiss. "You think you've won? I'm not leaving without a fight. I'll contest the will, claim undue influence, drag this through every court possible. It could take years, and you'll spend millions on legal fees." Samuel remained unruffled. "You're welcome to try, but I should inform you that Richard anticipated such a response. The documentation includes medical evaluations confirming his mental competence at the time of the transfers. We also have evidence suggesting you may have been medicating him beyond his prescribed treatment, which would significantly undermine any claim you might make." At the mention of the medication, Victoria's expression flickered with unmistakable fear. It was confirmation of our worst suspicions. Additionally, Samuel continued, Richard left instructions that if you contested his wishes, certain financial investigations should be initiated regarding unexplained transfers from his accounts during your marriage. I believe the amounts total nearly $3 million. Victoria's careful facade finally shattered completely. "You can't throw me out. I have rights. This is my home." "No, Mrs. Reynolds, it is not," one of the police officers interjected. "According to these legal documents, you are now trespassing on private property. You have two options. You can leave peacefully and make arrangements to collect your personal belongings later, or you can be removed and potentially face charges." Victoria looked from face to face, searching for any sign of sympathy or weakness. Finding none, she grabbed her purse and stood with as much dignity as she could muster. "This isn't over," she threatened. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." I stepped forward, meeting her gaze directly. "No, Victoria, you have no idea who you were dealing with. You thought you could erase us from our father's life and steal our family legacy. But Dad was smarter than you gave him credit for. He saw right through you." As Victoria was escorted from the mansion, Ryan and I stood in the foyer, overwhelmed by the mixture of grief, vindication, and relief washing over us. Our father was gone, and nothing could bring back the precious final moments with him that Victoria had stolen. But his foresight and love had protected us even after his death, ensuring that the home filled with our family's memories would remain where it belonged. Later, as we went through Dad's study, we discovered Victoria's detailed plans to sell the mansion to a developer who wanted to tear it down for condominiums. We found evidence of affairs she'd conducted while Dad was undergoing chemotherapy. Most disturbingly, we uncovered a hidden drawer full of our letters, cards, and messages to Dad that Victoria had intercepted, ensuring he never knew how desperately we had tried to reach him. The victory over Victoria felt bittersweet. We had reclaimed our inheritance and exposed her true nature, but the cost had been agonizingly high. The time lost with Dad could never be recovered. Yet as painful as the revelation process had been, it had also brought a measure of closure. Dad had not abandoned us. He had loved us until the end and had found a way to protect us even when he could no longer do so in person. In the weeks following Victoria's removal from the mansion, Ryan and I began the painful process of reclaiming our family home and, in many ways, reclaiming our connection to our father. Each room held memories that had been suppressed during Victoria's reign, now flooding back as we walked through the familiar spaces. The first thing we did was restore family photos to their rightful places. Victoria had boxed them up and stored them in the attic, but hadn't disposed of them, perhaps fearing questions from Dad. Seeing Mom's smile alongside Dad's, pictures of childhood birthdays and graduations back on the walls, brought a sense of rightness that had been missing for too long. We discovered Dad had left individual letters for each of us in his personal safe. Mine was dated just 2 months before his death. The handwriting shakier than I remembered, but unmistakably his. "My dearest Morgan," it began, "if you're reading this, then Samuel has executed my plan, and you and Ryan have reclaimed what is rightfully yours. I want you to know that not a day passed when I didn't think of you and wish things could be different." Victoria's control tightened as my health declined, but I never stopped looking for ways to reach you without her knowledge. He wrote about his pride in my artistic accomplishments, his regret at missing my first gallery showing, and his hopes for my future. He reminisced about teaching me to ride a bike on the mansion's long driveway and how I'd shown artistic talent even as a small child, decorating my bedroom walls with crayon masterpieces that he couldn't bear to paint over for years. Ryan's letter contained similar sentiments, along with business advice and expressions of confidence in his ability to lead Reynolds Innovations. Dad had thought of everything, ensuring we would have his guidance even in his absence. The most difficult discovery came when we found Victoria's record of our attempts to contact Dad during his illness. She had kept a meticulous log of every call, visit, and message, along with notes on how she had intercepted or explained them away to Dad. It was a cold, calculated document that revealed the extent of her determination to isolate him from us. Ryan called again about dinner next week. Told Richard he canceled due to work emergency. Morgan left voicemail about visiting this weekend. Deleted before Richard could hear it. Flowers delivered from both children for wedding anniversary. Removed card and claimed they were from me. Reading through the log, I felt a fresh wave of anger and grief. So many opportunities to connect with Dad in his final months had been deliberately sabotaged. Victoria had stolen something precious that could never be recovered. Yet amid the pain of these discoveries, there were also moments of healing. We found a journal Dad had kept during his illness, documenting his thoughts and feelings when he could write without Victoria's supervision. Many entries expressed his love for us and his regret at the situation he found himself in. He wrote about happy memories from our childhood and his pride in the adults we had become. Reading his words was like having one last conversation with him, a gift we had thought forever lost. Ryan and I had long discussions about what to do with the mansion. It was too large for either of us to live in alone, and it held both wonderful memories and the painful ones of Dad's final years. After much consideration, we decided to keep it in the family, converting part of it into a small private museum showcasing Dad's technological innovations and philanthropic work. The rest would remain a family gathering place for holidays and special occasions, ensuring the Reynolds legacy continued. We established a foundation in Dad's name to fund cancer research and support for families affected by the disease. It felt like the right way to honor him and transform our painful experience into something that might help others. The healing process wasn't just about the mansion or Dad's legacy. It was also about rebuilding our relationship as siblings. Victoria's manipulation had strained our bond at times, as we disagreed about how to handle the situation. There had been moments of frustration and blame as we watched Dad slip away, unable to reach him. Now, we needed to move forward together, supporting each other through our grief and recovery. One evening, about 3 months after the funeral, we sat on the terrace overlooking Mom's rose garden, sharing stories about Dad and reflecting on all that had happened. "Do you think we could have done more?" Ryan asked, voicing the question that had haunted us both. "Found a way to reach him sooner?" I considered this carefully. I think we did everything we could with the information we had. Dad made his choices too, both in marrying Victoria and in how he handled the situation once he realized his mistake. We have to forgive him for that and forgive ourselves for not being able to prevent it. Ryan nodded slowly. I keep thinking about the warning signs we missed early on. How different things might have been if we'd recognized what she was sooner. This led us to discuss the patterns we had failed to notice initially. How Victoria had isolated Dad from friends before turning her attention to us, how she had rewritten narratives to cast herself as the victim, how she had leveraged Dad's fear of being alone after so many years without a partner. "We need to be more aware in the future," I said, "for ourselves and for each other. People like Victoria target those who are vulnerable in some way, and none of us is immune to that." The lessons we learned from Victoria's manipulation were painful but valuable. We became more attentive to the relationships in our lives, more aware of potential red flags, and more protective of our family bonds. We established safeguards within Reynolds Innovations to prevent any single person from gaining the kind of control Victoria had sought. 6 months after Dad's death, we hosted a proper memorial at the mansion, inviting all the people who had meant something to Dad but had been excluded from Victoria's orchestrated funeral. Old friends, business associates, former staff members, and extended family gathered to share stories and celebrate Dad's life the way he would have wanted. Standing in the grand entrance hall, watching people laugh and reminisce about Dad, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me since his diagnosis. Victoria had tried to erase us from his life and steal our family legacy. But she had failed. The bonds between us had proven stronger than her manipulation. Dad's foresight had protected us financially, but his true gift had been the values he instilled in us: integrity, perseverance, and the importance of family. Those were the real inheritance, more valuable than the mansion or the company, and something no one could ever take away. As difficult as our journey had been, we had emerged stronger, wiser, and more appreciative of the time we have with those we love. Dad would have been proud of that. Perhaps more than anything else. I want to ask you, have you ever had to deal with someone who tried to come between you and your family? What warning signs did you notice? And how did you handle the situation? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who might need to hear it. Remember, sometimes the greatest strength comes from the most painful experiences. Thank you for listening to my story. And I wish you the wisdom to recognize manipulation before it takes hold in your own life.